Your ideas aren't big enough if they don't scare you. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Bill Gates don't play it safe. They chase what seems impossible. Bezos pushes for messy, unfiltered debates because real innovation comes from chaos, not perfection. Zuckerberg believes struggle reveals your true value, proving that the hardest path is the one worth taking. Gates sacrifices everything for his obsession, proving that success isn't about talent, it's about relentless commitment. If your dreams don't make you uncomfortable, you're aiming too low. And if you make it to the end of this video, put a hashtag believe in the comments below, and we might feature you here in a future video. Believe.
I wake up and follow my curiosity. I've always been a wanderer. And I even organize our Amazon meetings this way. I want crisp documents and messy meetings. And I want the meetings to wander. The only meeting I'm ever on time to is my first one, because I won't finish a meeting until I'm really finished.
You can do it because you're the boss. What about everybody else?
They have to wait for me. But that, this is, I try to teach, really wander in the meetings. There's certain kinds of meetings that are like a weekly business review or something, where it's like a set pattern and you're going through it. That can have an agenda and it can be very crisp. That's a different kind of meeting. But most of the meetings that are useful, we do these 6-page memos, we do a half-hour study hall, we read them, and then we have a messy discussion. So I like the memo should be like angels singing from high. It's so clear and beautiful. And then the meeting can be messy. I am very skeptical if the meeting's not messy. At one time, it doesn't happen very often because it's kind of verboten at Amazon, but I could tell in the meeting that the team had rehearsed the meeting.
That happens.
And I
a lot.
I could just feel it. You can tell the little tiny cues. And I turned to them and said, "Did you guys rehearse this meeting?" And they're like, yes. I was like, don't do that again. You don't need to. Because here's what, maybe you would rehearse a sales meeting, right? If you're going, if you're going to go visit a customer and you're trying to sell them a new product or something, maybe you want to have all your ducks in a row and you want to put your best foot forward.
But that's what people do for the CEO.
Internally, you're seeking truth. Not a pitch. I don't want to be pitched. And you don't want any of your senior executives to be pitched. And that's why messy is good. And you also want to be early. It's like you don't want the whole thing to be figured out and then presented to you.
Right.
Like you want to be part of the sausage making. Like, show me the ugly bits. And I always ask, are there any dissenting opinions on the team? I want to try to get to the controversy. Let's make this meeting messy. Help me make it messy.
I think you learn what matters to you and what's important and kind of your place in the world through repeatedly hitting your head against different challenges. And I think that's the journey, right? That's the entrepreneurial journey. It's also, I think, part of the beauty of building things. When you go to start a company, everyone kind of writes down what they would like their values to be, but values are not what you write down on the wall. It's like your lived behaviors. And you only really learn what you care about when you have to make hard trade-offs and face challenges. So, you learn the most important things through facing challenges. The entrepreneurial journey is very challenging, especially the early days when you're running a startup and there's the sense that what you're doing could just die at any moment, and the volatility, everything is just getting thrashed so much. And it's not, you obviously look back, you have all these fond memories, but it was not the most fun part of the journey, or the part of my life that I wish I could go back and relive. I think there are a lot of people for whom, if you knew how painful it would be along the way, you wouldn't get started. But then, I think that's one of the things that's good about human nature is you can underestimate how painful things are going to be, so that way you can go and do good things.
Computers, when I was young, were super expensive. And my friend Paul Allen and I actually snuck into places at the University of Washington where they had computers that weren't being used at night. And so we were fascinated by what the computer could do, but very few people were getting exposure. We had to go out of our way, and we were lucky that we did it all. And so then when the idea of moving the computer onto a chip that Intel would make, and that would make the computer literally millions of times cheaper than the ones we were using, so both more powerful and available to people on a personal level, then the idea of, okay, it would be very different, the software you needed, the way the industry would work. We were super lucky to be there when that was happening.
So what did your family think? Did they say there's something wrong with this young man? He wants to just do computers?
They knew I was obsessed with computers, that I would skip athletics, that I'd go in overnight, that I'd leave the house sometimes when they prefer I wouldn't go work at night on these things. And so it was kind of considered a little strange. And the big moment was when I said, instead of going to part of my senior year, that I wanted to go work for a company writing software. So they were great about allowing that to be my hobby.
I've learned the secret of success, no matter what you're doing. It's the ability, and I've learned it from some of the best, the ability to distinguish the difference between the signal and the noise of every day. Because in every day, you set certain things you have to get done that day. It could be this interview, it could be something else you have to do, whatever it is. However, around you, and ever more so today than even 20 years ago, there's a tremendous amount of noise. Your phone is beeping, people are calling you, you get distracted. And unfortunately, if you want to be effective, and you have a mandate, a big one, it's actually played out every 24 hours, because you may have a vision of where you want to go, but you have to do it day by day by day. So you have to learn over time to distinguish what is noise and what is signal.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight our favorite lessons from the video that will inspire you to remember what you learned today and actually apply them. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
To have reached the level of stardom that you have reached, and for the length of time, is quite an achievement. It's more than that. It's a huge achievement. But it speaks to more than just, obviously, the raw talent, but it also speaks to perseverance, the ability to keep going, which is something that's so crucial.
I think it's, perseverance is, I think it happens to some people. You don't have any option but to persevere. So maybe when I was young, I lost my parents very early, and then you realize that, okay, there's no rewinding this, there's no coming back from death, and you have to continue, make the most of what you have. So I was kind of a youngish orphan, and I had to work my way through it. Or it could be just part of nature, it's the nature of the beast that you are just with dogged determination, you keep on working.
Where does that come from?
I don't know, I've always tried to analyze it, that, why do I do what I do? Why do I wake up in the morning and just start doing it all over again, even when it's, I think it taught me, the work that I do, making films, the result happens very suddenly. You think you made the best of films, you think it's the nicest of stories to tell, you think the world is going to love it, and you wake up on a Friday morning and realize it's the biggest flop of your career. And you're
Which happens,
which happens more often than not. Or sometimes you don't like a film and that becomes the biggest hit of your career, and you say, how did this happen? I realized when you do a big hit film, it's done well and you're very happy and everybody's jumping around. Friday happens, Saturday happens, Sunday happens. And you realize this is a big blockbuster, but Monday I have to get back to work to make a better film. You made a flop film, Friday you're sad, Saturday you're crying, Sunday you're moping and you're not waking up from bed. Monday you have to get back to work and start making a better film. So Mondays are for trying to make better films always, so you have to persevere.
I remember one day my dad was playing poker I was like, Dad, I need a new pair of Converse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I see those shoes on your feet. They still work, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, when you have a job, you can buy whatever you want. But until then, those shoes still work. And I'm like, Dad, I can't get a job. I'm 12 years old. And one of his poker buddies speaks up and goes, yeah, I got a job for you. I'm like, what? He goes, I've got these boxes of garbage bags, and you can go sell them around the neighborhood. And I'm like, cool.
Like boxes of garbage
bags, right? So literally, I would go to our neighbors, and I go, hi, I'm your neighbor, Mark. Do you use garbage bags?
You sound like a Shark Tank.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. And of course, everybody uses garbage bags. So I'll never forget, they cost me $3 for a box of 100. I would sell them for $6, and I would just take them to them every couple of weeks, right? Whenever they needed more garbage bags. And I'm making $20 a week, which was like big time.
Right.
And I got my shoes and, but that taught me to be confident. And that taught me that I could sell. And that taught me that selling was helping, not convincing, because once I figured out that everybody needed garbage bags, then it really became obvious to me that if I can find things that people needed and wanted, and I could do it a better way than what they were doing it, then I can make some money. And that's kind of stayed with me since
I was just about to say, it's crazy how you was thinking about that at 12, and everything you just said basically translates to everything you basically 100%. Doing now in life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because that's what it's all about. I mean, selling isn't convincing somebody to do something they don't want to do. Selling is understanding what Chris Paul needs and then finding a way to provide it in a better way than what they're doing now.
Any regrets?
No, I have no regrets. I don't have any regrets. I think dwelling on mistakes is stupid. You're supposed to learn from them.
Yeah.
And not do them again.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's just stupid. And you're going to have skeptics and critics all the time.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is I respect their opinion and I listen to it, but I don't care. It doesn't matter to me because
it's noise.
It's just noise. And so it just, the most hard, I've got 9.8 million followers and some of the comments are just brutal. And, my head of social media goes, oh, I can't believe it.
Do you even read that? Like, I don't know if I would read that.
I don't, but I have a team that does to understand what's relevant to our base.
Right.
And once in a while, when it's a topic, I'll just say I'm going to play a new riff on my new guitar. I'll do that live on Instagram. It'll go out to millions of people. And I do read the comments on, because there's always somebody better who can play better than you and you can learn from it. So, or if it's about watches, I read it, It's about things that interest me. I'm in every watch group known to man, and I'm a well-known collector all around the world, so I get communications from royal families and heads of state. If you don't have any critics and there's no skeptics around what you're doing something wrong. I don't care about anybody. I'm not going to let somebody who's my critic get in the way of success. Why would I do that? There's not even revenge. It's just you got to get to what you started. You have to finish it.
The people of this ancient land embraced me in their limitless love. And I've learned from these people that neither power nor poverty can make your life more magical or less torturous. I've learned from the people of my country that the dignity of a life, a human being, a culture, a religion, a country, actually resides in its ability for grace and compassion. I've learned that whatever moves you, whatever urges you to create, to build, whatever keeps you from failing, whatever helps you survive, is perhaps the oldest and the simplest emotion known to mankind. And that is love. A mystic poet from my land famously wrote, "Pothi padi padi jug bhaya, pandit bhaya na koi. Pothi padi padi jug bhaya na pandit koi. Dhai aakhar prem ke, pade so pandit hoy." Which loosely translates into that whatever, if you know Hindi, please clap. Yeah, it's very difficult to remember. Which loosely translates into actually saying that all the books of knowledge that you might read and then go ahead and impart your knowledge through innovation, through creativity, through technology. But mankind will never be the wiser about its future unless it is coupled with a sense of love and compassion for their fellow beings. The 2.5 alphabets which form the word prem, which means love, if you're able to understand that and practice it, that itself is enough to enlighten mankind. So I truly believe the future you has to be a you that loves. Otherwise, it will cease to flourish. It will perish in its own self-absorption. So you may use your power to build walls and keep people outside. Or you may use it to break barriers and welcome them in. You may use your faith to make people afraid and terrify them into submission. Or you can use it to give courage to people so they rise to the greatest heights of enlightenment. You can use your energy to build nuclear bombs and spread the darkness of destruction, or you can use it to spread the joy of light to millions. You may fill up your oceans callously and cut down all the forests. You can destroy their ecology or tend to them with love and regenerate life from their waters and trees. You may land on Mars and build armed citadels, or you may look for life forms and species to learn from and respect. And you can use all the monies that we all have earned to wage futile wars and give guns in the hands of little children to kill each other with. Or you can use it to make more food to fill their stomachs with. My country has taught me the capacity for a human being to love is akin to godliness. It shines forth in a world, which civilization, I think, already has tampered too much with. In the last few days, the talks here, the wonderful people coming and showing their talent, talking about individual achievements, the innovation, the technology, the sciences, the knowledge we are gaining by being here in the presence of TED Talks and all of you, are reasons enough for us to celebrate the future us. But within that celebration, the quest to cultivate our capacity for love and compassion has to assert itself just as equally. So I believe the future you is an infinite you. It's called a chakra in India, like a circle. It ends where it begins from to complete itself. A you that perceives time and space differently, understands both your unimaginable and fantastic importance and your complete unimportance in the larger context of the universe. A you that returns back to the original innocence of humanity, which loves from the purity of heart, which sees from the eyes of truth, which dreams with the untampered, which dreams from the clarity of an untampered mind. The future you has to be like an aging movie star who has been made to believe that there is a possibility of a world which is completely, wholly, self-obsessively in love with itself. A world, really, it has to be a you to create a world which is its own best lover. That, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, should be the future you.
What would be your biggest advice to an entrepreneur, somebody trying to start a business?
Well, first know your business, right? I think people will always stop me and say, well, I want to start a business, what should I do? And if you don't know, you're not ready.
Right.
You've got to have something that you're good at. And if you're going to do it, you got to be the best at it. Because I'll tell them, look, if I come in and compete with you, I'm going to kick your ass. Are you ready to compete with me?
Yep.
Right? And you've got to work like there's someone working 24 hours a day to take it away from you.
Most of us have been conditioned not to take a risk. People ask me all the time, what does it take to be happy? And I always tell them it's really simple. One word, progress. Progress equals happiness. If you keep growing, you're going to feel alive. And if you keep growing, you're going to have more to give. And when you're growing and giving is when life is magnificent. It doesn't matter how many statues, Oscars they give you, or Emmys, or how much money you have in the bank. We've all seen people have all those things, and I get the phone call because they're depressed or somebody commits suicide in that area. So it's really an inner game. And I think that's what's missing for us today. Everybody's focusing on the outside world, and how there's a lot of things in the outside world you'll never be able to control. You can influence, but you can't control it. This your mind, your emotions, your body. You have 100% control over what you do with these things. And that's where the game is won. You win the inner game, then you win the outer game. But a lot of people spent their life trying to win the outer game. They won and they're miserable. So to me, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And so many people are focused on success still, which to me is like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's like success is getting what you want. Fulfillment is living what you're made for. You know, and it's like fulfillment and success, they're not even in the same universe. And there's nothing wrong with going for success, but you really got to figure out what you're made for. And nobody knows in the beginning. So you start where you are and you do what's in front of you, do what's next. And you keep growing until you start to discover, hey, this is my real passion. This is my real hunger and drive. And it can change. People go for 5, 6, 7 years, and then they usually question their business, their career, their body, their relationships. And then one of two things happens. They change direction and feel renewed, or they go, no, I got a great deal here. What the hell's wrong with me? And they recommit and they get stronger. But that's life. And if you don't grow, I don't give a damn how much you got going for you, you're going to be miserable.
For me, it comes down to, you know, after you get beyond the rage is justified under oppression. It also can be really dangerous. You got to be careful not to be consumed by your own rage.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that I've worked really hard on. And what I loved about the peaceful protest, it's like peaceful protests put up a mirror to the demonic imagery of your oppressor. And the more still you are in your peaceful protest, the more clear the mirror is to the oppressor, for the world to see and for them to see themselves. You know, so I was really encouraged by how powerfully this generation was able to hold that mirror.
When you die, you'll be dead for a very long time.
Are you sure?
Listen, if this whole thing about souls go into, like, I would love to come back as a little Danish girl. But yes, when you die, you will be dead for a long time. Also, I don't know if you know this, you were not born for a very long time. We have, like, even though life is long, and hopefully everybody here lives to at least 100, it's also, if you take a step up, very short. The concept of not squeezing the shit out of it, from a happiness standpoint, from a trying standpoint, from an ambitious standpoint, is ludicrous to me. And so I keep it super simple. Nobody died, best day ever. I mean it. I mean it. To the negative people in my life, there's been some of my friends and family that are negative, that there's 2 times in my life where I actually said this. I got so frustrated to a family member, so frustrated, so upset. I literally told them, because they were so upset about the dumbest in the world, I literally told them that I wished something atrocious happened to them the next day, just for perspective. We just lack perspective. Like, we complain about ludicrous things.
What is the biggest difference between fear today versus fear 50 years ago versus fear 100 years ago versus fear 20 years ago? Isn't this a common thing? Like, when market does well, economy does well, a few people are prepared for it. Most people kind of sit around, don't do anything about it. What's changed? And is that going to be happening 50 years from now, 100 years from now, where people capitalize and most don't?
Well, that's a fabulous question, because, you know, today, when I refer to 2008, most people remember 2008. Do you know what I mean? That's when Lehman went down, Bear Stearns went down.
38% drop.
Yeah, they all remember it. But when I started Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the only thing they had was the Depression. You know, I came out in 1997, Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out. And their only reference points was the Depression. And none of the people I talk to remember the Depression. So the fear today, I think people are a little bit wiser, is because they do remember 2008, and they do remember 2000. So 2008, 2000, 2008, and here we are today. So I think most people are at least kind of tuned in. I hope it doesn't come down, but I'm afraid it will. That's what I have to say.
Most people are more tuned in today because it was only 12 years ago when the last market crash happened. I remember 08. 08 was pretty ugly. We started our agency a year later in 09. And
that's
AIG,
the smartest thing you could have done.
Yeah, believe me, it benefited us because we got a contract with AIG at the time and a few insurance companies, and we started growing, but everybody was scared.
But I want to say what you did was really, really smart, because the best time to start a business is right after a crash. I made more money after 2008 than ever in my whole entire life, because everybody was hiding like little cockroaches.
You made more money after 2008 than your entire life.
Yeah, so when, here I'm talking about the coming depression, everybody says, oh, you're such a pessimist, I go, no, I'm excited. I get sexually stimulated thinking about all the bargains that are going to be on the street, I mean, it's going to be bargains everywhere. But everybody else, oh, you're pessimistic. No, I'm actually optimistic. So anyway, so you're very smart. When I study business. Guys who start right after a crash do very well most of the time.
AI is the opportunity that you've been waiting for, but you have to make a move. Given how much AI has already altered our systems, over the next few years, I'm expecting it to majorly accelerate our ability to test and learn, not just here, in society. And whoever learns the fastest is going to win. This is all happening in plain sight. Everyone's talking about AI. I know this isn't the first time that you're hearing about it, but to take advantage of this moment, I need you to do 3 simple things. 1, reframe your thinking around AI. Don't see it as the enemy. See it as a tool. It really is a phenomenal tool. You're not going to be replaced by AI, at least not yet. You're going to be replaced by a human using AI. So please be that human that's replacing other people. To do that, you need to, 2, figure out how AI is going to disrupt you. Face it head on, don't run, don't hide, identify your vulnerabilities. And 3, identify all of the AI tools that are relevant to you and master them. Learn absolutely everything you can. Remember, this is the very beginning of a very aggressive and fast-moving revolution. Moving quickly gives you 2 advantages. Number 1, you can rocket ahead of other people by mastering the tools. And if you master the tools, people are going to turn to you because you're able to more efficiently solve problems. Going back to the Elon Musk quote, if you can solve harder problems faster, you're going to get paid more. And in these early days where most people are stuck in the deer in headlights mode, you have an unfair advantage. The second thing is, while others are caught between fascination and panic, you can be voraciously acquiring skills and growing more useful. So take action now. Start mastering the technology while everybody else is absently playing around with AI, dismissing AI, fighting against it, or running in fear. If you embrace it, you can create a skill set moat around you and leverage your knowledge to get paid more or to build something that wasn't even previously possible. The second advantage that AI gives you is an almost unimaginable amount of efficiency in certain tasks. It is insane the things that you can do. If you've seen it in action, it is breathtaking how fast it will come up with answers.
I see 10x branding everywhere, not just in your conferences. I feel like it has become part of your branding. What does 10x represent?
10x was a discovery I made in 2008 when the economy crashed. I went from having some money, some net worth, to like 2008, literally I thought I was going to lose everything. We had a baby on the way. I was embarrassed that I'd put my family in this situation. I didn't have anything to do with the mortgage crisis, yet it pulled everything with it. It was like a,
everybody got affected.
Dude, everybody. It didn't matter who you were. So I went and sat in my office and said, how did I do this? Like anytime I have a problem, first thing I look at, after blaming everyone, I look at what did I do? The one thing I didn't do right was I kept hearing this thing, too big to fail, too big to fail. And I'm like, bro, they're telling you, be too big to fail. I was too small. I should have scaled. I needed to be bigger.
my wife says, well, what are we going to do different next time? And I'm like, and when she says, what are we going to do different? That means she's going to be the cheerleader and I'm going to go do it, right? Which is cool. I need that partnership. And I said, next time this happens, I will have 10 times the debt, 10 times the assets, and 10 times the companies. Today I owe $2 billion. I don't have 3 companies, I have 17. We have 100 times more people to talk to, at least 100 times, maybe 1,000 times, a bigger audience. And we're in 25 verticals, not 2. So 10X basically is scale. You got to get big. You don't have a choice. If you want to survive on this planet without worrying every second of every day, you got to get big, or you got to get a partner. You got to be with a partner that's ready to scale.
When someone comes to you with imposter syndrome or not fully sure of themselves, what do you say to them?
It's really reasonable that you would feel this way. Maybe you shouldn't be confident. Because that's the thing is like, if we were to zoom in, like, what does the word confidence mean? Like, let's look at statistics, right? People are like, what is our confidence in this statistic? And so they have evidence, they have data to support how confident they are in whatever the stat is, right? And so if we are confident in something, then it means that we believe we have a high probability of achieving whatever the prediction is, right? So like, how strong is the prediction we have? Well, how do you make predictions? You usually use a basis of data. And so if our past is the data set that we have, then we can be like, if I've worked out every day for 4 years, and then somebody comes up to me and is like, dude, you're just so like confident about working out, or it just seems like you're so certain. Like, how are you so motivated? All this stuff. It's like, I'm pretty confident I'm going to go to the gym because I have gone to the gym every day for 4 years. I think confidence, if you're wearing it, doesn't feel like confidence. It feels obvious. And I think that's the big difference. Because I remember that tweet got taken from multiple different instances and then glued together. So the outwork yourself doubt came from a small speaking event that Layla and I did. And someone said, how do you guys, because I just presented all the stuff on sales and building sales teams. And they were like, how are you so confident? Like, you seem so certain about this stuff. And I was like, and it was weird because I don't come from the personal development world. So this was like all new to me. And I was like, I don't know. This is just what it is. This is how you build and scale sales teams. I know this because I've done it. Like, this is it. I don't need to beat my chest and look in the mirror and be like, really, like, I'm going to crush this speech today. It was just because like I was talking about stuff I knew, and I knew it because I had done it. And so if someone isn't confident, it might be right for them to be unconfident. Now, the flip side is, and this is what I would add to answer that person, not tongue in cheek, if somebody actually did come to me, I would say, what would you require someone to have done for you to say it would be reasonable for them to talk about this subject? And if they listed out these stats, and then I said, okay, do you match that? Or do you exceed that? Now, if they said, I do kind of match that and exceed that, then I'm like, then just get out of your own way, man. Just talk about what you know. And if you feel like you don't know it, then don't say it. And on the flip side, if they're like, no, I don't match that, then I'm like, then get off the stage. Go back in the trenches, go do the reps. And then when you come back, you will feel confident because you will have, quote, outworked yourself out, which is really giving yourself undeniable proof. Because like, I don't like the chest beating thing. If you are confident without data, you're delusional. Like, you're a faker.
Yeah.
I just think it's fake. You're either faking it or you're copy pasting someone else's experience. Because otherwise, where would you get the data from? Like, what you're saying, where would you get it from? You get it from somebody else that you heard, which means you're irrelevant. Like, they probably said it better because they did it. So just like stop and go do your own thing.
If you're stuck in a story. That's where you're stuck. There's a story you're telling yourself that doesn't serve you anymore. And you have to evaluate what that story is. I'm serious. Right now, if you say, Ed, I'm kind of stuck where I am. Well, what you need to do is you need to alter your associations. You need to do something in a short window of time. No question about it. You definitely need to evaluate what is no longer needed and evaluate the story you're telling yourself. There's all kinds of stories we tell ourselves that don't serve us anymore. This is critical. Maybe it's a story about your past, a story about your parents, a story about a previous relationship, a story about a success you used to have. You keep talking about that doesn't serve you to get to the next level. If I can be real with you, whatever you've achieved up to this point, that story you keep talking about, every second you spend in that old story about what you've achieved, your degree, some business you had, one thing you were real successful at in the past, every time you live in that story, you're stripping time and focus from the new story. What's the new story you're telling yourself? You can't have a new identity without a new story. What's the old story you keep repeating? Maybe it's not a success. Maybe it's a failure that you've had. It was a business setback. It was the market turned. It was the economy. It was someone who did you wrong. A relationship that let you down. A business partner who wasn't consistent. A failure you've had. A poor decision you made. A mistake you made in your life. And you're repeating this story to yourself, simultaneously trying to create a new identity. You can't take that old story into the new identity.
Failure and invention are inseparable twins. Everybody wants to be inventive. If you go talk to corporate America or any institution, actually, government agencies and so on, innovation is something to be proud of. People like invention. But the problem is they don't like failure. And you cannot have invention without failure. If you already know it's going to work, it's not an experiment. And only through experimentation can you get real invention. The most important inventions come from trial and error with lots of failure. And the failure is critical, and it's also embarrassing. And so that's why people, when we're kids, we always are doing trial and error, and we're never embarrassed. You watch a little toddler, and they will try for hours to put a square peg in a round hole, and it never works. But it doesn't keep them from trying. And they try things like that, and that's how they learn. And we all have that when we're little, and then as we get older, somehow it's not as cool as you get older to fail and to fall down. It looks clumsy. And so we get in our grooves, we have a set of expertise and skills, it's kind of a comfort zone, and you have to constantly push yourself to say, no, I don't care about failure. In fact, I say at Amazon, we have to grow the size of our failures as the size of our company grows. We have to make bigger and bigger failures, because otherwise none of our failures will be needle movers. And so I would see it as a very bad sign over the long run if Amazon wasn't making larger and larger failures. And if you do that all along the way, that is going to protect you from ever having to make that big, kind of Hail Mary bet that you sometimes see companies make right before they fail and go out of existence.
16 years ago, we started NVIDIA, and the insight that we had, some people call it vision. Vision's an awfully big word to me. Vision's an awfully big word to me because I believe, first of all, vision matters. Let me tell you that vision matters, and I'll help you understand that in a second. But I like to use the word perspective because it makes it possible for anyone to have one. When you say vision, it feels like only a few selected visionaries of the world can have one. But everyone has a perspective, and that's in fact all vision means. That you see the world in a way that is either different or otherwise, okay, than somebody else. And you see opportunities that I think that you believe are particularly important to go in and address, that you can address in a particular way. And so perspective. Our perspective at the time, this is 1993, you guys won't remember this, but the PC was Windows 3.1. CD-ROM was about to be introduced. There were no PCs with networks. Wireless technology. If somebody said radio, I think the word that would come to mind is FM radio. And so wireless technology didn't exist. The fastest microprocessor in the world was a 66 megahertz 46 DX2, and I don't think any of you would even use it in your tennis shoes today. And we would run our computers with that. And the PC was becoming used for desktop or for office automation. Our perspective was that this particular device was going to be unique in the sense that it has the ability to run programs. And what if we gave it the benefit of running 3D graphics programs so that you could explore new worlds, play games, play games. And so we started a company, and the business plan basically read something like this. We're going to take technology that was available only in the most expensive workstations. We're going to try to reinvent the technology and make it inexpensive. And the killer app was video games. And so I took this idea to Sand Hill Road, and they told me there was no video game market. People don't start companies to play games. And my parents, I remember calling my mom and telling her that I'm going to start this company, and she says, what do you guys do? And I said, we build these things called 3D graphics chips, and people would use them to play games. And then she said, why don't you go get a job? and so now, of course, games was we believe going to be a very large part of the marketplace. Now, we had that perspective for very obvious reasons. We grew up in the video game generation. I was the video game generation. I was the beginning of the video game generation. And so the entertainment value of video games, computer games, was very obvious to me. And I could imagine how it could be a very large market and a very large industry. For a lot of the people that were older, that sensibility didn't exist. And so notice, I just described to you a perspective about the world that we had that is apparently, obviously now true, because video games is the world's largest digital media industry today. It is apparently true. And yet at the time, our common sense was unique. Nobody would have created the technology, nobody would have created a company with the sole purpose of building technology to make video games possible. And so that was our perspective.
I'm not worried, but if you're asking me, will there be another meltdown to zero? Absolutely, 100% it'll happen. And it'll keep happening. Well, all of these exchanges, all of them, all the unregulated exchanges are having massive outflows right now. The smart money has got the joke. They saw what happened at FTX. They're not sitting around for an explanation. And if you're not willing to be audited, and I'm speaking about any exchange, if you don't have an auditor, you don't want to be transparent, you don't want to disclose ownership, why should institutional capital stay there? Of course it's not going to. And frankly, it's very hard to find an auditor that wants to touch this stuff right now because of an unregulated cowboy environment. It's all going to end. And yes, there'll be many more zeros. The only place I have any crypto right now is up in the Canadian market, which is 100% regulated. They have a broker-dealer attached to an exchange regulated by the OSC, all kinds of rules. You can't commingle. It's called BitBuy, and I've got my money there. It's owned by Wonderfy, a public company. I have lots of capital tied up in there. It's the only place. I'm not putting it in an unregulated exchange anywhere. Forget it. Never again. And they get audited up there. And so, frankly, if you're sitting around trying to get me to buy a token from an exchange to get discounts on trading, that stuff's garbage.
Sometimes, without even realizing it or figuring it out, you are suddenly somebody that people start looking up to you. I'm not saying that's unfair, but you have to then. There is a responsibility, jokes apart, there is a responsibility which comes with having reached a certain stage of success, or people start looking up to you. And yeah, you have to behave in a manner which does affect, like you said, they are little children and they find, is it scary to think that there are kids or people who might have a little part of me as they're growing up? So I would say, I would really, really be not scared if they had a part of me, and even if it sounds a little talking about myself, if they had a part of me, because this is God's honest truth. If they had a part of me to work hard, yes, I'd not be scared. If they had a part of me to be honest towards their work, I would not be scared at all. If they had a part of me where they have a great sense of humor and take life as it comes, even the adversities and the goodness, I wouldn't be scared. But yeah, if there is a part of me which does get disturbed, angry, overreacts, reacts to things which perhaps I should not and nobody should, and say, okay, this is part of the job, this comes with the work, I'd be a little scared. So I would tell all the kids who have a part of me, keep these parts intact, the hard work part, believing in your job, giving it your best, The other parts just ignore. And whenever you get a chance, I just want to tell you, for the boys, and even for the girls actually, whenever nothing works, just put your arms out and say, that'll work for you. I mean, do stretch your arms out to embrace life and to embrace friends, embrace everything that comes your way, goodness and badness.
When I got to Dallas, I was a bartender at night, and I moved in. One of my buddies from Indiana said, "You got to come to Dallas." And I'm like, "I'm there." You know, my car would only get so far. It had a Fiat X19 with a hole in the floorboard that guzzled oil every 60 miles. And I went down there, and there's a place called The Village. It's the world's largest apartment complex. We had 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment. I didn't have my own room. I didn't have my own drawer. I didn't have my closet. I had a pile, and I had one ratty towel that I stole from Motel 6. And that was it. And so I was looking for my career, got a job at a software store. And I was, didn't have a tech background, so I was teaching myself all this. Because the way I look at tech is somebody invents it, and everybody else is tied for second place in the ability to learn it. And if I work harder and faster to really dive in, even if it means reading the manual, just diving in, then I can get a head start.
How old were you during
I was 24. And so sleeping on the floor, working in a software company, learning, getting better at what I was doing. And then one day, because I was dying to get out of that rat hole that I lived in, I had a chance to go out and close a sale that would have got me a $1,500 commission. And so I went to my boss, his name is Michael Humecki, and I said, "Boss, one of my responsibilities was to sweep the floor, wipe down the windows, and open the door to open the store. I got the sale. You got to let me close the sale." He goes, "No. You got to be in there to open the store." And I'm like, "Michael, no." So I made the executive decision to go out, pick up the check, thinking if I hand this guy a $15,000 check, of course he's going to change his mind. Fired me on the spot. And so here I was, living in a shithole, excuse my French, just this ratty place with a Motel 6 towel, sorry, Motel 6, and really didn't know how I was going to get out. But I decided, okay, I'm a lousy employee. I went to one of the companies that I'd been talking to, Architectural Lighting, and I said, "Look, I need $500 to be able to buy the software you want, and I promise you that even if it doesn't work, I will wash your car, I will walk your dog, I don't care what it is, I will do whatever it takes to make it up to you." And they gave me the $500, and that allowed me to create Micro Solutions. And 6 months later, I was out of the rat hole, and my company turned into a real company, and that's the one I sold for $6 million when I was 29, 30 years old.
It's always been impact for me. I love people. Somebody asked my mom, "Was he always like this?" She's passed away, but she used to tell the story, so I'd hear her version of the story. And, we grew up in kind of the hood of LA, a really rough territory, and on a commercial street in this crappy little house. There was a lot of violence around there. But right next door was this old liquor store, and we were poor, and she was pregnant with my brother. I was almost 4.5 years old, 5 years old. And, I would go to that place to get stuff because we had nobody else. My father was an underground parking attendant, so he wasn't there. So it was she and I. And so I guess she sent me next door to get bread and milk, which we desperately needed. We had very little money. I guess I was gone for a very long time, where she was worried, and I come back with no bread and milk. And she said, "Where's the bread and milk?" And I said, "Well, there's a poor boy there." So I gave him our money. And she says, "We're poor." So I've always had that. And I think there's an old movie called Mr. Holland's Opus. I use it sometimes to Date with Destiny. And there's a line in the movie with this man. His whole life was about, writing this great opus and how he'd make it rich and famous and all these things. And he becomes a school teacher, not because he likes kids, but because he gets off at 3 p.m. and has the summers off, thinks he's going to write this opus. And I could cry thinking about it right now, because it's just what life's about. Life's about love, and life's about people. But there's this moment when he loses his job because they cut the music program, and he decides he's going to retire. And he's leaving with his wife and his kid, who's deaf. He's ironically positioned. You know the movie.
I am very familiar.
I get teary-eyed thinking about it right now. Every time I watch it, you see this man come, and he's at the latter years of his life. And all of a sudden, as he's leaving, there's this sound in the gym, and he goes, "What is that sound?" He goes, "No." And it's after hours. He goes to open up the gym, and there's all these students from all the years of his 25 years of teaching or 30 years of teaching, whatever it was. And they're all cheering, and he comes down, and he's just stunned by the response. And his wife gets up and says, "A lot of people heard about the retirement of my husband, and I can't believe the outreach. And so we wanted to let him know how much he's loved." And And then all of a sudden the doors open and this little redhead girl who he had blasted in the beginning because she had no talent in the clarinet. But he then fell in love with trying to support her. And it's when he became a better man. She's now an adult and she's the governor of the state. And she goes bursting in and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were a little bit running late." And she comes up and she looks at him and gets on stage and she does this little speech. But the essence of it is, Mr. Holland's touched all of us so much. She says, Mr. Holland had this opus he was going to write. And word was it was going to make him rich and famous. But he's neither. At least not outside this small town. But she said, but if he just got those riches and fame, he would have missed out on what he has here. And she says, look around you, Mr. Holland. These are the notes of your music. This is the symphony of your life. And sorry, again, emotionally, I was so silly. I'm an emotional guy. That's why I do what I do, because I get to see people's lives change. I get to see moms reclaim themselves. I see children, stand up for themselves. I see men who become men again and really step up and take the responsibilities that make them feel alive. I see people build businesses and I see people happy again. I see couples coming together. I see joy and happiness, not because life is always like that, but because they can find meaning even when it's painful. And to me, to live a life with that kind of meaning is a gift from God.
I'm curious if it lets you, I think the obvious answer is yes, but like you're expressing your own ideas and thoughts more often than if you're being directed. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And because it's not really directed per se, it's sort of half capturing real life. I shoot everything now. So what I find is it makes me explore and experience in ways that I wouldn't have if I wasn't going to shoot it.
Right.
We get into cities, we get into, Seoul, Korea, and I'm exhausted. But I know MLMA is doing something, so I want to go down. It actually makes me get out of the bed and go and explore and experience and meet people. Even this time with you and doing this press conference at the YouTube space, it's like it's an opportunity. I wanted to meet with you. I wanted to sit with you. I wanted to hear what you think. It's like it jogs that creative beast inside of me.
A lot of people have reached out to me in the last 5 years on this. For people that follow me, a lot of people know I'm obsessed with context. I'm obsessed with context. It's why I'm a very good marketer. Making videos on TikTok is different than making videos on LinkedIn. The way I talk to a 22-year-old in Germany is different than the way I'm going to talk to a 45-year-old in Afghanistan. Context is everything to me. I'm religious about context, which is why I think I'm one of the most successful content producers in the world. It's why I think VaynerMedia is one of the most successful content producers in advertising. When people are like, Gary, I've noticed a big change in you, I remind them that my message is pretty consistent. It's just contextual. If you read Crush It, my first book, what put me on the map, I talk about making $48,000 a year and loving life. That if you were ecstatic with your life and you're making $48,000 a year, you can stop reading this book, because this book is for people that are unhappy and are looking for ways to get out of the job that's making them unhappy. This YouTube and Twitter thing and Facebook thing is going to be big. Unlike our grandparents, you can do this after hours while you're at home with your kids. This is a big opportunity. Most people saw the young rah, 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 rah. I wrote that book during an economic crisis. For example, if we go into a real, deep global recession, my content's going to change dramatically, because what's going to be needed in that moment is to remind everybody that hard work is part of the equation.
If you have money, you have more power. If you have attractiveness and sex appeal and all that, you have more power. So I think one of the most misunderstood words here is power. And that's why we have Rollo on this program. It's about power. So, and whether you, and I don't know if you want it or you don't want it, but I would say most people want more money. People want to be more attractive, to be more, sexually attractive, or have great relationships and things like this. But also you want more power, the ability to do, because many people today are trapped. And when people lack power, their lives are kind of different. So power is simply the ability to do, and one of the biggest abilities is, can you change an addiction into a good habit? Can you take a bad habit into a good habit? So for example, ever since meeting Rollo and the gang, I was able to break my habit of overeating. I overeat every time I'm under stress. What do I need to do? I need to eat. And thanks to Dr. Nicole Shrednicki, an ultra-healthy human, and the encouragement of Rich and Rollo, I've been able to get my body back down to Marine Corps weight. And I'm 74. So I have the body of a 25-year-old now when I was in the Marine Corps. But I had to get over the addiction of eating. And that was tough. Thank God I didn't drink that much or smoke. But that's power.
Do you need an entrepreneurial mindset to become wealthy?
No doubt. I mean, you could win the lottery or have your parents give you money. That certainly is possible. I don't think you're ever going to get what I would call wealthy in the short term without an entrepreneurial mindset. Now, in the long term, you can invest very traditionally and generate incredible wealth. It's really pretty startling what compounding interest looks like over time. And if you're willing to sit in the stock market, which returns an average percent of 7% over inflation, so being in the stock market for 30, 40, 50 years really is pretty amazing. And you double your capital every 7 years. So you put it in, if you've got $50,000 to begin with, 7 years later, you've got $100,000. 7 years after that, you've got $200,000. 7 years after that, you've got $400,000. So it gets big number pretty fast, right? When you're going from 1 million to 2 million, 2 million to 4 million, but you've got to be in it 50 years, right? So you've got to have a lot of those 7-year cycles. And that, quite frankly, for the vast majority of humanity is exactly what you should do. You're effectively, if you do it the right way, do not try to pick stocks, okay? Don't try to pick stocks. Nobody beats the people like Ray Dalio, right? He's got hundreds of millions of dollars in AI, 1,800 employees that all they do is that for a living, and they know how to make arbitrage on milliseconds. If you're not going to play at that level and you're basing your decisions on things you hear about on Twitter, it's already too late by the time that makes its way out. So that's where people make the mistake. They want to do it sexy. They want it to feel like gambling. They're trying to treat an NFT like an investment vehicle. All mistakes. You want an index fund. And the reason you want an index fund is index funds are, you're betting on a sector of the entire economy. So you're not trying to pick a winner. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to the horse track. All I'm going to bet on is that a horse wins the race. A horse comes in second place, a horse comes in third. Doesn't matter which. I just know that they tend to work out on this distribution, so I'm going to invest in something like the S&P 500, which is a list of the 500 strongest, is probably the right way to think about it, the 500 strongest companies in the economy. If one of them ceases to meet that criteria, they fall off, stop being a part of that portfolio, a new one comes on and becomes part of that portfolio. So it is not what they call actively managed. So nobody's trying to buy a quick stock. It meets this criteria or it doesn't. As you get fancier, you can invest in more index funds. So maybe you want a growth index or an index out of China or developing economies, whatever. And you can start to broaden out like that, but still index, still passive, still long-term hold. It's the only reliable way historically to buy low and sell high, which sounds stupid, but is the hardest thing to do in investing.
Nobody's journey is seamless or smooth. We all stumble. We all have setbacks. If things go wrong, you hit a dead end, as you will. It's just life's way of saying, time to change course. So ask every failure. This is what I do. Every failure, every crisis, every difficult time, I say, what is this here to teach me? And as soon as you get the lesson, you get to move on. If you really get the lesson, you pass and you don't have to repeat the class. If you don't get the lesson, it shows up wearing another pair of pants or skirt to give you some remedial work. And what I found is that difficulties come when you don't pay attention to life's whisper, because life always whispers to you first. And if you ignore the whisper, sooner or later, you'll get a scream. Whatever you resist persists, but if you ask the right question, not why is this happening, but what is this here to teach me? What is this here to teach me? It puts you in the place and space to get the lesson you need. My friend Eckhart Tolle, who's written this wonderful book called A New Earth, it's all about letting the awareness of who you are stimulate everything that you do. He puts it like this. He says, don't react against a bad situation, merge with that situation instead, and the solution will arise from the challenge. Because surrendering yourself doesn't mean giving up, it means acting with responsibility. Okay, many of you know that, as President Hennessy said, I started this school in Africa. And I founded the school where I'm trying to give South African girls a shot at a future like yours, Stanford. And I spent 5 years making sure that school would be as beautiful as the students. I wanted every girl to feel her worth reflected in her surroundings. So I checked every blueprint, I picked every pillow, I was looking at the grout in between the bricks, I knew every thread count of the sheets, I chose every girl from the villages, from 9 provinces, and yet last fall I was faced with a crisis I'd never anticipated. I was told that one of the dorm matrons was suspected of sexual abuse. Well, that was, as you can imagine, devastating news. First I cried, actually I sobbed for about a half an hour, and then I said, let's get to it. That's all you get, is a half an hour. You need to focus on the now, what you need to do now. So I contacted a child trauma specialist. I put together a team of investigators. I made sure the girls had counseling and support. And Gail and I got on a plane and flew to South Africa. And the whole time I kept asking that question, what is this here to teach me? And as difficult as that experience has been, I got a lot of lessons. I understand now the mistakes I made because I had been paying attention to all of the wrong things. I built that school from the outside in, when what really mattered was the inside out. So it's a lesson that applies to all of our lives as a whole. What matters most is what's inside. What matters most is the sense of integrity, of quality, and beauty. I got that lesson. And what I know is that the girls came away with something too. They've emerged from this more resilient and knowing that their voices have power.
You got to show up. Number one rule of success, show up. And see Rambo, he showed up. Okay, Corleone showed up. Rambo showed up. Okay, Armageddon, Bruce Willis showed up. Man, I'd like to get him for the 10X Growth Conference. Die Hard Boy showed up. And of course, oh my God, Burt Reynolds, Arnold Schwarzenegger. These guys showed up. You got to show up, folks. You got to show up, okay? Now let me just show you some things. I'm going to show up and show off, okay? This was given to me, thought leadership, forward-thinking strategy for the 10th annual, 10X. Global Family Office Investment Summary in Dubai. I showed up, I spoke, they gave me this beautiful gift. Okay? How you show up, man? How you show up? Just a taste from 3 hours. Most people don't show up. Most people don't show up. Showing up, it don't mean you got to the office. You understand? It doesn't mean you came to work. For me, showing up means I show up. I've been showing up since I was 25 years old, man. Before that, I wasn't showing up. I was showing off. I was acting a fool, being a fool. High school, I didn't show up. I went to class, I never showed up. My body went in the room. See, showing up doesn't mean you got there. Showing up means you got there, and then you showed up again, and then you showed up again, and then you showed up again. It means you show up for the class, you show up for the homework, you show up for the class, you show up for the homework, you show up for the test, you freaking get a perfect grade. It means you keep showing up to the next level. And I hear a lot of people talking about showing up. You know, showing up's not everything. Let me tell you something. Showing up, when you show up the right way, Johnny, you got to put your seatbelt on. When you show up the right way, showing up is 100% a success. That means you show up and then you show up again, and you show up again, you keep getting better at your game. You can't keep showing up as the old you. You got to show up as the new you.
Can you walk me through your stages of being willing to be consistent and then seeing it, how it's paying off for you now?
Yeah. So I'll give 3 maybe insights off of 6 years of podcasts. So I started July of 16 was my first podcast. And I think it was called like the Gym Secrets podcast because that's what it was called then. And this is right as I was starting Gym Launch. And I had gym owners who were in my world. And so I wanted to just kind of create, this is my lattice work of thinking about how we grow gyms, right? Now, at that point, I already had 6 gyms and had sold them and had done 30 turnarounds. So like I had evidence that I knew what I was talking about, just for context. And so I talked about just varied, like, here's how you fix churn. Here's how you sell membership. Here's how you deal with like the spouse isn't there objection. Here's how you can get someone to commit to 3 days a week on your off hours so that you can increase the capacity of your facility. Like, here's how to arrange your lobby so that you can increase your sales percentage. Like, here's how you can weave in reviews and test. Like, I mean, just all the shit that you do to run a business. So number one, the reason I was able to stay consistent with it was because it was easy for me to do, because I always tried to interweave it in my normal work schedule. And so for me, it was like twice a week, I would go live in a Facebook group and I'd get questions from all the licensees of like whatever the issue is. And if I saw a recurring issue, that would be the topic that I would talk about. So it was very responsive for me, and I already knew the answer to the question, and I just would dive deep on it for X period of time. And sometimes I'd get riled up and I would do one impromptu because someone was like, man, all these leads are broke. And then I would just lose my shit on camera about how they were selling out of their own wallet and they should be trying to help people, blah, blah. And so that was insight. Well, number one is that it had to be natural and easy for me to do to work within my current kind of constraints. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what led to the consistency. The 2 things that led to the breakthrough at year 4.5 was, number one, is I rebranded the podcast to The Game. Because you can imagine how many people are like, oh, you got to listen to this podcast called Gym Secrets. Doesn't matter what the episode's about. You're not going to listen to it unless you own a gym. Like, it's just like, why would you listen to it? And the second one, or I guess this is insight. This is the third insight, but the second of the breakthroughs, was that I started asking people to share it. That was it. Those are the 3 things that changed. But the actual format itself has not really changed. I stopped talking about gym specific, gym only, in September of 19. So that was when I said, I'm not going to talk about gym stuff anymore. I'm just going to talk about general business. And then literally that month, like the next month it grew, and the next month it grew, and the next month it grew. And then when I started saying, hey, if you're enjoying this podcast, like, I don't run ads, I don't do anything, like, just share it with a friend. That was like the next increment of growth. But that was it. You know what I mean? I mean, I didn't make content anywhere else besides my podcast. And I stayed for 4.5 or whatever it was, 4.5 years at 2,000 downloads a month.
Wow.
And I feel really confident that the content in there is still good.
You got to be able to have a big enough dream that the visions and the dreams of the people you're going to enroll into your organization, they're going to become a part of your team or your company. Their dreams and their visions can fit inside this big one you've got. That's what makes you magnetic. That's what makes you compelling. That's what attracts people to you. And so anything, Art used to say, any church, Boy Scout troop, football team, you show me something that's winning, it's run by a leader. And leaders have vision. Where there is no vision, people perish. Where there's no vision, your business perishes. Where there's no dream, whatever endeavor it is you're involved in will eventually perish. But if the dream's alive, if the dream's big enough, you can accomplish anything because you'll overcome the adversity, the tough times, the difficult times that the people who ultimately lose won't overcome. Really, winning in business is more about staying power, more about relentlessness, more about tenacity, more about vision, more about dreams than it's ever about skill. You show me somebody with enough vision, a big enough dream, I'll show you somebody who will eventually acquire the skills, the talents, or the other people necessary to make that huge dream happen. But I've seen all kinds of talented people, all kinds of skilled people that succumb to adversity, to the difficult times, to the lows.
What happens when you have $5 million?
You have set yourself free for the rest of your life. You have to understand that when you put that money into a watch, it has no yield other than capital appreciation. So if you have to decide what your lifestyle is going to be and what you need on an after-tax basis, and buy dividend-paying stocks and bonds to provide for that. But you can also buy long-term assets, and I recommend watches as be one of those, just like gold. Some people like Bitcoin. I mean, there's all kinds of alternative asset classes. And when you think about the context of a portfolio, and I say the same thing, my mother taught me this. If I look at my stock portfolio, which is a huge part of my net worth, no more than 5% in any one stock, no more than 20% in any one sector. So I don't own more than 20% tech stocks. In my real estate portfolio, real estate's unique in the sense that some people let it become up to a third of their net worth, but that's also a heavy maintenance cost for all those buildings and condos you own. So you have to have balance and you need diversity, no different in the watch collection side of your business.
I have a simple way that I work. I just work very hard. I hear a lot of stories, and more than the story, I just like the people who are making a film, and I say, okay, I'll do it. I think, at least in films, creatively, the secret of the success is that I just feel the goodness and do it. I have no other reason. I'm not very calculating about the film that I'm doing. I'll be lying if I say I get sentimental about a film, that's why I do it. I would be lying if I say a certain topic touches me and is close to me, that's why I do it. I don't know, I just do it believing in a lot of goodness. And I say, okay, he or she believes it, looks very earnest about it. Like, I haven't signed a new film. I've had offers from some really nice filmmakers and some really nice and professional scripts, and I'm not decided. And then suddenly somebody will tell me, and that's why I do some films which go wrong also. I've never calculated what kind of film to do. And I think maybe that's why whatever the powers that be say, okay, he's doing it with a good heart, so let's just make it do well. I'm quite surprised with the kind of acumen I have for choosing scripts. I have lasted for so long, and that also. So I believe, I guess the people who, I start telling everyone, I don't choose the films choose me. So it's easier to answer a question like this. I don't choose them, they choose me. So and I just try my best to do it well. And it works. It has worked. Every year I end up having, God has been kind, every year I end up having a film which does very, very well. And for years I've been on charts with the #1 film, #2 film, #3 film. And I'm like, okay. As a matter of fact, it's now strange if I don't make a hit film every year. So I feel like, so there was not enough goodness. So I try and be better next year and try to spread that kind of goodness. And I truly believe, I tell everyone, it's a little spiritual with me now. So I just, okay, this is nice, let's just do it. And I play it very easy. I don't concentrate too much, I don't think too much, I don't believe too much, I just do it. And it turns out right.
My dad did upholstery on cars, so if you got a rip in your car seat, you would take it to where he worked. My mom worked odd jobs from wherever. And we lived in an okay neighborhood, but we weren't poor by a long shot, but we were truly middle class. And over and over, my dad didn't go to college, my mom didn't go to college, and so they would beat into me, you're going to college. And they used to make me work at odd jobs so that I would learn the value of work. And I'd go where my dad worked doing it with cars, and he'd make me sweep the whole, and this place was nasty, make me sweep all the time, tried to get me a job in a mill, but couldn't get me a job in a mill. My mom wanted me to lay carpet because she was worried about me if I didn't have a trade. And so she got a friend of hers to try to get me, to teach me how to lay carpet. And if you ever go, there's this little office in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you trip over the carpet, that's where I learned how to lay carpet. And I was going through these things, I'm like, this is just not me. And I always had that individual spirit to say, okay, I can come up with things that can make me money. I mean, when I was 9, I would sell baseball cards. When I was 12, I told my dad I wanted a pair of basketball shoes, and it just so happens he was playing poker with his buddies, who were all probably rip-roaring drunk at the time, and I just didn't realize it. But I was like, Dad, I want a new pair of tennis shoes. You know, the new Beta Bullets were coming out or whatever they were, and new Converse. And he's like, you see those shoes on your feet? They work just fine. When you have a job, you can go buy whatever you want. I'm like, Dad, I'm 12. I don't have a job. And one of his buddies stood up, well, not stood up, but he said, hey, I got a job for you. He had these boxes of garbage bags. And he's like, I've got these boxes of garbage bags. I don't know what to do with. Why don't you sell them? I'm like, cool. You know, what do they cost me? And they literally were a box of 100 these blue garbage bags that he would sell them to me for $3. And then I went door to door. And I was like, hi, my name is Mark. Do you use garbage bags? And I learned I could sell. It was just like, okay, $6, you know, I'll drop them off whenever you need them. Just call me. And I made some money, bought my shoes, and, you know, and that just gave me confidence, and it took off from there.
If you look at a person's life, most people major in minor things. Jim Rohn, my teacher, used to say that to me all the time, meaning they know about all kinds of things that don't matter. But there's maybe a half dozen things that matter most. There's your body, there's your emotions, there's your relationships, there's your finances, there's your career or your sense of mission or your business. And then there's the spiritual side of life. And so I've always taught on all those areas. But in 2008, when all hell broke loose the first time, you know, I've worked with Paul Tudor Jones, one of the top 10 financial traders for now 26 years. And so I knew a little bit in this area. Most people don't know. I know the details of.
You know a lot, man. Hearing you talk about finance, you are freakishly knowledgeable. I've seen you on stage with people that make a living doing it. And not only do you keep up, in many ways, I think they're listening to you as closely as you're listening to them at this point. How do you learn that stuff that deeply?
Well, you know, I go for total immersion. It's like if you learn language a little bit at a time, you know, 2-3 years from now, you don't speak the language. But if I dumped you into Rome and said, you're not leaving for 8 weeks and there's no teacher, you're going to be speaking Italian before you leave there. So I'm a big believer in total immersion, but I also believe in modeling the best on earth. So in Money Master the Game, fortunately, I have access. So it's like, I'm going to interview 50 of the smartest financial people on earth and everybody who's made it from nothing to multi-billionaire. And they all did it different ways. And I'm good at pattern recognition and I'm good at pattern utilization. In fact, I would say to your audience, you know, in 2040, which sounds like a long way from now, 18 years ago like that, your mind will be blown. Half the jobs we have today, according to Oxford and a variety of other universities, are going to be gone. They're replaced by robotics, by algorithms. You know the game. And so the bottom line is you need to be good at pattern recognition. And that's what gets somebody strong at anything. I mean, you look at, you know, why is Amazon doing so well? He realized one pattern was valued over anything else: convenience. Right? If you look at Tom Brady, a friend of mine, he's got pattern recognition like nobody else at 43 years old. He's able to do things no one dreamed could be done. He's got more Super Bowl rings than any team. So I said, I want to go to the best people on earth and see what do they see that none of us see. What's the pattern? Then you got to learn pattern utilization. It's one thing to see it. It's another thing to use it. And then if you're good after a while, you get to pattern creation. It's like if you learn to play the piano, most people play other people's music. And then there's a point you've learned so much that you're able to create. And I think those 3 skills are the most important skills. So I look at the areas that matter most and say, who already has that extraordinary pattern recognition utilization? So I go to Ray Dalio, who's, you know, returned more money to investors than anyone alive. You know, he's going to have a different level of understanding than the average person. And because I immerse myself so much, most of these interviews are supposed to be 30 minutes. And the average one was 3.5 hours. And so, but like Ray Dalio is now a dear friend of mine. I can pitch and catch with him because I came so over-prepared and because I could, again, not just catch the ball he threw, but pitch it back. And so to me, that's what I did. I did for Total Immersion. It was a 3.5-year project and then expanded. I wrote, you know, Unshakable after that because I saw what was going to happen in the markets and I wanted people prepared.
Everybody was sitting at home looking at their devices, right? When what felt like a new atrocity to some people, but was happening over and over again for African Americans. And for this to happen in this time for the whole world to see what we've been saying for hundreds of years.
Yes.
My grandmother taught me to try to be thankful for these times and these opportunities. to try to be thankful for your pain, you know, and we are in a circumstance that we've never been before. The entire globe has stood up and said to the African American people, we see you and we hear you. How can we help? We've never been there before.
We are at a point in our lives where we all feel very similar to what you talk about a lot in regards to having the most opportunity to take on risks and try new things. But sometimes you do the calculations in your head. And even though the risk of failure is so low for us right now, there's still fear of taking that step, a voice telling you not to. What are different ways that we can conquer that fear? Also, why do you curse so much?
I'll answer the easier one. I think somewhere along the line I realized if I just stay being myself, a lot of good things will happen in a world where nobody stays themselves. And I'm a Jersey boy from the streets of Edison, New Jersey, right? Like this is how I talk. This is how it is in my head. No different than when you wrote that down to ask the question, like that's what was in your head. When I curse, it's in my head. And what's interesting is it used to mainly only come out more in like public speeches and things of that nature. And then, you know, like I just never think, brother, right? I'm never thinking, right? And what I mean by that is I'm just being natural at all times. And so I don't even know when I'm cursing, genuinely. Really, I really don't. It doesn't even register. There's never been a moment where like, I love when people like don't like it and they're like, he's forcing it. I just laugh so much. Cause I'm like, if these people knew how, if anything, there are times where I think about not trying to do it, but still can't control it because I'm just in my flow. As far as your first question, it actually ties to the second question. When I started public speaking and losing out on speaking gigs left and right because I cursed, I knew that I was gonna double down on what got me there, which was I'm not gonna overvalue other people's opinions, I'm gonna value my opinion about myself. The little voice in your head is called the insecurity devil. The insecurity devil on your shoulder is saying to you, don't do this because when you fail, the girl you like, your brother, your mom, your teacher, like someone's gonna think you suck and you believe them. And that's the problem. If people really got into a place of just doing things that they want to do and not worrying about what people thought about it, everybody would take risks in their 20s. You, by nature of being in this program, are already taking risks that are different than your contemporaries, so you're already halfway home. But this is still school, even though it's different. And the real world of jobs and companies and starting your stuff, that's the real jungle. This is just cool right now, what you're doing. But the real jungle is scary because there is no system. It's not subjective. You know, teacher Adam can't just say you're good. The world tells you the truth. And people are scared of the world. That's why we have professional students. And so, you know, I think the reason people are scared of the world is they actually think getting fired or having their startup fail or them not being able to be an influencer because nobody gave a is a bad thing, when I think it's a great thing. This all comes down to confidence and insecurity. The reason you won't do something is you are too insecure to do it.
So I got this job at Xerox, the same story you have is I got my little handy dandy sales planner up. I'm dying. You know, let's say there's 20 sales guys at the Xerox branch in Honolulu. I'm dying. I'm like, and this guy Sanchez flies in from Western Region, Santa Ana. He looks at my sales thing and I got all these appointments, but no sales, you know, and I'm going to get fired. So I said, I can't, I'm working hard, but I'm going to get fired, you know, because I had no sales. So I go, my Rich Dad's office was at Waikiki. So I go to Rich Dad's office and I show him my planner. He looks at it, he goes, okay. He says, let me ask you this. How many, and you know, I had to knock on doors. I had no established accounts. The FNGs and the FNU guy has to always cold call. You know, that's as brutal as it comes. So I'm cold calling in Honolulu. I'm getting nowhere, but I'm making a lot of cold calls. So I show my rich dad my sales planner, just like you do with your guys. And I said, my rich dad says, well, it's obviously why you're failing. I said, why is that? He says, you're not failing enough. He says, if you want to become successful, you have to step up your failure rate. I went, what? Because in my poor dad's family, the academics family, PhDs and all this, failure means you're not successful. And to my rich dad, failure meant you were getting successful. So his advice to me, and I'm working for Xerox, I'm probably 28 years old. He goes, you got to step up your failure rate. Find a way to fail faster. So that's when you get creative. You know, I can only make so many sales calls a day.
The whole idea, if you want to live the good life, is to recognize that you are a deeply flawed individual that is holding yourself back, that your life is a reflection entirely of your choices and not your circumstances. And if you're not happy with that, that means you're doing something wrong. So I'll define right and wrong as it's right when it moves you towards your goal and it's wrong when it moves you away. So if you're not where you want to be, you are by definition doing something wrong. But most people can't work through the loop that I call the physics of progress, because their ego stops them at a critical part. So the physics of progress go like this. You have a guess as to how you're going to get to your goal. So first of all, it assumes you know what your goal is. But for now, let's assume that you do know your goal. So you've got a guess. This is what I would need to do in order to get to my goal. You're going to do that thing and it's going to fail. Now, we all have to struggle with, I tried the thing and it failed. The problem is most people put up their ego defenses, find a way to believe that it was somebody else's fault. It was the economy. It was where I was born. It was that my parents didn't have money. It's that the system is rigged, whatever. Because those are probably valid reasons why it's going to be harder for that person than the next person, they stop. But let's go back to my definition of right and wrong. Right is that which moves you towards your goals. Wrong is that which moves you away. So people then are blind to the fact that they're saying that their real goal is to get where they're going, make $1 million, have a successful business, be a teacher, whatever. But the reality is their real goal is to feel good about themselves. Most people never have the self-awareness to avoid that conflict. And then even if they have the self-awareness that they're in a conflict, they don't realize that they could shift their self-esteem around instead of being right. So what I tried was right. And the only reason it didn't work is because the world is stacked against me. Might actually be true. But how are you going to move forward? Because there is some better thing that's going to move you forward. Most people are never going to see that because they stop at making it somebody else's fault.
You will find true success and happiness if you have only one goal. There really is only one, and that is this: to fulfill the highest, most truthful expression of yourself as a human being. You want to max out your humanity by using your energy to lift yourself up, your family, and the people around you. Theologian Howard Thurman said it best. He said, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. The world needs people like Michael Stolzenberg from Fort Lauderdale. When Michael was just 8 years old, Michael nearly died from a bacterial infection that cost him both of his hands and both of his feet. And in an instant, this vibrant little boy became a quadruple amputee, and his life was changed forever. But in losing who he once was, Michael discovered who he wanted to be. He refused to sit in that wheelchair all day and feel sorry for himself. So with prosthetics, he learned to walk and run and play again. He joined his middle school lacrosse team. And last month, when he learned that so many victims of the Boston Marathon bombing would become new amputees, Michael decided to banish that darkness with light. Michael and his brother Harris created MikeysRun.com to raise $1 million for other amputees by the time Harris runs the 2014 Boston Marathon. More than 1,000 miles away from here, these two young brothers are bringing people together to support this Boston community the way their community came together to support Michael. And when this 13-year-old man was asked about his fellow amputees, he said this: first, they will be sad. They're losing something they will never get back. And that's scary. I was scared. But they'll be okay. They just don't know that yet. We might not always know it. We might not always see it or hear it on the news or even feel it in our daily lives. But I have faith that no matter what, class of 2013, you will be okay. And you will make sure our country is okay. I have faith because of that 9-year-old girl who went out and collected the change. I have faith because of David and Francine Wheeler. I have faith because of Michael and Harris Stolzenberg. And I have faith because of you, the network of angels sitting here today. One of them, Khadijah Williams, who came to Harvard 4 years ago. Khadijah had attended 12 schools in 12 years, living out of garbage bags amongst pimps and prostitutes and drug dealers, homeless, going into department stores, Walmart in the morning to bathe herself so that she wouldn't smell in front of her classmates. And today she graduates as a member of the Harvard class of 2013.
I'm more of a doer than I'm a dreamer.
Okay.
I don't really dream. I mean, I do. I've written all this stuff up. Oh, one day I'm going to own a jet and I'm going to have a bunch of apartments. But I wasn't dreaming very big. My apartment target was like 1,000 units.
Okay.
I thought if I ever had 1,000 units that that would have been the pinnacle. We own 12,000 and I'll probably buy that many this year.
Wow.
But all this has happened because of doing. I remember walking in a room. I was in the Oak Brook Marriott in Oak Brook, Illinois. And I walked in a room and it was empty and there was chairs set up for like 200 people. I said, one day I'm going to speak to a full room with 200 people sitting in the room. Well, we've done 35,000 person events.
I was there.
Yeah. So I never dreamed as big as I've accomplished, but I do. Like, I'm a doer. Like, anything that I can do, I do. The phone calls, down to grunty, kind of terrible little things, like taking out the trash.
Okay.
That is a form of doing. There's no work that I won't do. And because I know I'll take out the trash or pick up the boards or help the guy out or whatever it is, right? Because I know I can do those things, I can do the bigger things too.
The reason people buy is based on a prediction of future value. So they buy because they predict that they will get value from you later. What is the easiest way to get someone to predict they're going to get value from you after you buy? By giving them value before they buy. There's two ways that you can fundamentally get leads. You can, one, just make your offer to somebody and say, hey, I will wash your car for $100. Now you can put lots of razzle dazzle around it. That is a offer. Products or services that you exchange money for and the terms under which you do that exchange. And so this is directly from my first book, $100 Million Offers, or in Espanol, a core offer versus a lead magnet. What's the difference, right? Because fundamentally you'll have something that's valuable in both of these instances. The core offer is the thing you sell that makes you the most money. If you're like, which one is it? The one that makes you the most money, that's your core offer. If all of a sudden you start making more money on your lead magnet, guess what? That's actually your core offer. Lead magnet is the thing before the thing. Lead magnet is not a partial solution. All right, what a lot of people try and do is like, hey, I'm gonna give you the first 6 minutes of this 12-minute video and get the rest, click here, right? I think that's not the right way to do it. I think you lose trust. And that's literally the opposite of the objective of lead magnet. A lead magnet is a complete solution to a narrowly defined problem. If you're gonna do anything for a customer, there are many micro steps that happen to create a bigger solution. Let's say I paint houses. There's a lot of micro steps that have to happen in order for a house to get painted. First, you've got to size up the house. Then you have to give an estimate of whatever. Then you have to do the design component and you have to do the 3D visualization. And the bigger the thing is, the more steps there are. The idea is, okay, can I pick one of these very painful steps for my prospect and solve it for them at a massive discount to attract more people to want to do it with me? And I do such a good job at this massive discount that I increase the trust they have with me. And now they have one foot in the door. We're not giving away partially done work. We're giving complete work to a narrowly defined problem that once completed opens up
the next problem.
You are one decision away from changing your life. And you have to accept that. You're one new meeting, one new relationship, one new contact, one new action, one new decision away from shifting your life from where it is right now to a totally different place. So what's the decision? You already know. I could go backstage now. There's something you've been hesitating on. There's a contact you need to make, isn't there? There's a job you need to quit. There's a relationship you need to engage in. Maybe there's a relationship you need to leave. I don't know what it is, but I know there's a decision that you need to make to take you to the next level, just like I know that's true for me. Because decisions shape our destiny when they're backed up by some massive ass action. Okay, but you can't take the action if you don't decide. Everyone say yes. People avoid being desperate. Think of the fact they come here tonight and they're down. They're not where they want to be financially. Their relationships aren't what they want. Maybe they're in a desperate place, and you might think that's a negative thing. But when you're in a desperate place, you take the best actions. Desperation is a great place to be. Those of you that are achieving, one of the reasons the achievement is slowed down is you've allowed yourself to feel less desperate. When you were broke and starting your business, or when you were brand new in your relationship and you were desperate to get her to love you or desperate to get him to love you, you took massive big action. How many of you are moms in the room? Raise your hand. You moms, if you woke up tomorrow morning and your baby wasn't in their bed, would you be desperate right away, yes or no? Big time desperation. You wouldn't be thinking about what you need to do. You'd be acting, wouldn't you? You'd immediately make the decision. You'd take massive action. You'd search the house. You'd go into the street. Would you worry if your makeup was on right? How you looked, what people thought about you? You wouldn't, would you? Have to have the perfect plan to go find your baby that's missing. You wouldn't need any of that because you were desperate. So when you remove desperation, all this bullshit creeps into your life where you think you have to have the perfect plan and look the perfect way and have the perfect thoughts and be all zen and perfect. What you need is to be desperate. What you need is to get after it. And I want you to get desperate to make that decision. Why? Because our obsessions become our possessions. What you obsess about most regularly, you will eventually possess in your life. The challenge for most people, sisters and brothers, is that we obsess on the things we're fearful of, what we don't have, what we're worried about. And then we end up possessing those things over and over again rather than programming ourselves to become obsessed with what we want, what our dreams are, what we believe we deserve. When we become obsessed about those things, long term, we end up possessing those things. Can I get an amen for that? Yes? Yeah, most of us don't replace the external parts of our lives because those things happen naturally without thought. The external results of our life, in order to replace ourselves with the next best version, requires intention, requires obsession, requires desperation. Everyone with me on that, say yes. So it's not unnatural to change. Your friends that think you're crazy to have started your business or come to a seminar or spend money you don't have, they're the crazy ones. It's unnatural to be the same person you are right now next year. For all of you in here, the 35-year-old you should be gone next year forever, and there should be a brand new, better 36-year-old. You 20-year-olds, there should be a better 21-year-old next year. You should constantly be replacing yourself just like your bones do, just like your lungs do, just like your cells do. It's natural to be replacing ourselves, but we're around people who aren't, so we think it's natural not to.
You don't necessarily get it right exactly right the first time. I mean, the car leasing business, basically you were competing on the cost of money to finance cars. And it's very hard to delight a customer when you just give them the car and tell them to send you a monthly check for 5 years and you'll be back at that time. So his talents were being wasted basically in that business. But at the age of 40, with all of that experience behind him, he found the golden key, and he took a very ordinary business and turned it into an absolutely extraordinary operation. And just like Mrs. B or Rose Blumpkin did with furniture. And he didn't worry about whether the Federal Reserve was going to tighten or ease. He didn't worry about whether the stock market was up or down yesterday. He didn't worry about the things he couldn't change, but he did focus on the one thing he could change, and that was the customer's experience. And I have seen the one I didn't, the one that got away, Enterprise, I went down to Florida and tried to talk him into selling to Berkshire, and he was smart enough not to do it. Probably the value of the company has quadrupled since I made that visit. But he was smart enough to see that he would find that business. Henry Ford, as you may know, failed twice before he started the Ford Motor Company in 1903. I mean, the test isn't whether you get the greatest business idea in the world the first time out. The test is whether you keep learning as you go along what your strengths are and what you can do for your customers, what you can bring especially to the party. And to do that, you need the education that I know you've received through 10,000 small businesses, but you need a genuine desire day in, day out to delight the customer. I've never seen a business, and I've seen a lot of businesses, but I've never seen one that delights the customer that doesn't succeed. I mean, what you want is that customer the next day when they think, do I want to rent a car or do I want to buy some furniture? What goes through their mind? You know, it's the place where they've had a great experience. I don't know what I paid for this tie. Actually, probably if somebody gave it to me, but for the purposes of this speech, I will say I have no idea. But or the shirt I'm wearing, or this. But I do know. I will remember how I was treated when I bought it. I mean, you long forget about the price, but you never forget whether you had a good experience or a poor experience with the purchase experience.
Here's the thing. It wasn't so long ago that I was a student and sitting in a seat in an auditorium like you guys are here today, listening to. I remember very specifically this time when Bill Gates came to talk at Harvard, and I was just like, wow, how do you do that? But the trick is that the media likes to sensationalize this as if you have some eureka moment or you are some singular person who can build something on your own, and that's just not how the world works. When I was in school, I built a lot of stuff that I just liked building. There was not a single moment when I had some revelation that Facebook was going to be awesome. That's not maybe how the media or movies or whatever would like to portray things. It's much less exciting. But the reality is, I think most services in the world that reach the scale that Facebook has, you start off building something that you care about, and you don't necessarily think it's going to be that big. I didn't. I built Facebook, the first version of Facebook, for my college community because I wanted to be able to connect with the people at my school. And I remember very clearly talking to my friends at the time and saying, how cool is it that we have built this community for our school? One day it's going to be awesome when somebody else builds this for the world because something like this needs to exist for the world. But it didn't even occur to me that, my friends and I might be able to play a role in doing that, right? Because we were college students, right? I mean, we didn't have any, engineers to work with or servers or resources or anything like that. And, there were these huge companies that deliver products for hundreds of millions of people, right? I always assumed that it was going to be like Microsoft or Google or someone would build this for the world. And what basically just happened is at each step along the way, we just kind of kept doing the next thing and growing from there. And there were teams inside these other companies that thought social media was important and were working on it. But there were all these different memes and narratives in the world. People would say, oh, well, this is just a fad. People are going to use it, but then they're going to stop. So, so a lot of the teams who were working on didn't take it that seriously, or, the higher-ups in those companies didn't care, so they didn't get resources, and we just kept going and going. And then people would say, all right, fine. So maybe people are using it, but it's never going to make any money, right? I mean, social media doesn't make any money. And we just kind of kept going, and going. And then pretty soon we had a service that was bigger than any of these other ones. And that kind of is how we are here where we are.
Larry and Sergey almost got acquired. Can you tell us a little bit about this? And I always wonder how the world might be different if that had in fact happened.
We had developed this technology we called PageRank. Sadly, not WinRank. But anyway, it probably would have sold better that way. But we had developed this technology that we found was useful for search. It by itself wasn't really a complete search engine. What we had kind of just search titles of web pages and ranked them quite well. But we showed it to a bunch of the existing search companies back then. Some of you might remember them, InfoSeek, Excite, Lycos. Probably the greatest interest came from Excite, and actually came from Vinod. You were the investor in Excite. And we spent a while talking to them, talking to you, Vinod.
Yeah.
You remember that. In the end, I don't think the management team there was quite as excited about it, no pun intended. But I remember there were 4 of us at the time, 4 grad students at Stanford. And I remember we fired off a note to Vinod. It was just like a little email. We said, we don't really want to sell, but okay, for $1.6 million, you got a deal. And a few minutes later, we got a reply and said, that's a lot of dough, but okay, we'll do it. I know, that's characteristic of Vinod, right? So then, 10 minutes later, Scott, one of the 4 of us, comes running in, laughing, huge grin on his face. He had faked the reply. And yeah, back then, the ethics around faking email weren't quite the same. Anyway, so he had that big joke, and the deal obviously never came to fruition, and we went our own way to build search.
So the way I remember it, we actually agreed on a deal around $350,000.
What?
This is typical.
Are you trying to renegotiate this now?
But I had a hard time getting the management team to agree that they should acquire Google.
I think he's saying that they were having a hard time going to 350 and we were having a hard time changing our number.
Yeah, they felt they didn't need it. But, I start here for one very simple reason. There are many, many instances where things could have gone either way. And I'm really glad they didn't acquire, because the world might have been a very, very different place. Looking back in retrospect, I feel like it would have been really, really sad if, in fact, Larry and Sergey had sold the company and not pursued the vision and changed the world the way they have. So
it's actually kind of an interesting story, because the reason we didn't sell it is not so much the money. I mean, I don't know, we were grad students, eating burritos or whatever. So $1 million was a fair amount. The reason I think we really didn't sell the company was that we talked to all the search companies at the time, and they just weren't interested in what we were doing. And it was obviously didn't want to buy this company that didn't really have anything without the people. So they wanted us, but we were well, why are we going to work at this place that doesn't believe in search? It's not going to cause anything good to happen. So I think ultimately we didn't sell for that reason, just that they weren't interested in it, which is the same reason they, had trouble getting to $1 million, which I guess at the time was a lot of money. But I think ultimately for me it was just about wanting to actually, search seemed pretty important. It was about actually wanting to do something in that area, and didn't seem like that was going to happen in these organizations.
The future has no experts.
right? We entrepreneurs, someday we are the experts, right? So this is what I think. And when you an entrepreneur get used to failure. Today, say Alibaba, you succeed. Well, our company won't last 102 years. Why 102 years? Because every target, every goal we give to our team should be very accurate. We were born in 1999. Last century, we had 1 year. We want to spend 100 years and plus 1 year, 102, cross 3 centuries. So very accurate. We never see we are successful because we are only 19 years old. There's 83 years to go. So we will never say we're successful. We just survived 19 years. We are lucky. But in the past 19 years, we have made thousands of mistakes. As an entrepreneur, don't learn from other people how they succeed. Learn from how these people fail. Because a lot of MBA schools, they teach you successful case studies. When you read too many successful, you think you can be successful. No. There are a lot of things that you don't know. Because, some business school came to Alibaba, write case studies. They say, no, this is Alibaba. And I say, no, this is not Alibaba. They wanted me to sign after 1 week study. They say, this is case study Alibaba A. I said, no, this is not me. They say, Jack, you don't know you. And I said, all right, I signed. And next 5 years, every year there is a case study in Tsinghua University. I was invited to sitting at the back, listen to the MBA schools talk, learning about our case study. And they always put a competitor. Competitor in Alibaba, who will succeed? For 5 years, they always agree Alibaba will die, the competitor will win. But 5 years, all the competitors died. So how can you learn from the case study like that? Learn from the mistakes. Because most of the companies I talk to, entrepreneurs, most of the mistakes they made are the same. Most of the success reasons, you don't know. They're different reasons. So when you learn from the mistakes, not because you want to avoid the mistakes, because when you see the mistakes, when you have these kind of problems, you know how to face it. An entrepreneur have a strong heart towards the difficulties, mistakes, the troubles, the failures, but should be a warm and soft heart to your colleagues and to the customers.
I've felt many times that I'm not a disciplined person. But people always insist and say, oh, it must take so much discipline every day to get up. And every day you were in the gym at 7 in the morning and you worked at 9:30 in the morning. And then you went to college after that. And then you went this and this and you worked in construction. I was like looking forward to getting up in the morning and looking forward driving to the gym and working out 2.5 hours and then going down to the beach and taking a run in the deep sand and getting some cardio work done and all this stuff. I was looking forward to it. It was not like, oh my God, I have to do another workout. Yes, you do that when, for instance, sometimes people go to the gym and the doctor says, you should go to the gym and you should work out because otherwise, I see some problems coming up, high cholesterol and body fat and this and that. And you're going to go and wipe out, 10 years younger than you want to. If there's ever the right time to wipe out. But in any case, so that person you can see in the gym is there and they do their reps and they do their sets and they're not really into it. You can see there's no life in their eyes. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like they grab the weight and they just do those sets and they get the pump and they feel good and they put the weights down and get the next heavier weight and they do the set. And so that's really fun. But that person is kind of like a vegetable in a way. They just cruise around in the gym. They sit on the life cycle and they just pedal away. And when you say to them, so why do you work out? They have no answer. Then eventually they say, well, to be honest with you, the doctor told me that I should get in shape. That's better for my health. to bring my blood pressure down and my cholesterol down and my body fat down and all that. So they're not really. So I say to them always, I said, you know what you should do is you should just pick a goal that you can chase. They would say, like, what? I said, well, how much do you weigh? I'm weighing 190 pounds, and I want to lower my body weight. I said, well, why don't you pick a goal like you want to go down to 170? And it is now March, and by August, when you go to the beach, you're going to have a slimmer waist, less body fat, and you look leaner, and you can be proud of your body. I said, pick that goal. Oh, that's a good idea. I said, write it down, and then write down the sets you have to do to get you there, and the amount of reps you have to do, and the amount of life cycle that you have to run, and regular bicycle, and running that you have to do. Write all of this down, and then you mark it off. Every day you mark it off. That's what I did. To me, there was really that feedback that I see, a line being crossed. That means one set was done. It was a satisfying kind of a thing. The line was crossed off. The next line was crossed off. And so I tell people that, and then they just say, oh my God, this is, I'm going to do that. That is such a great idea. Then they come back to me like a few months later, and they say, this worked.
Oh, good.
It was unbelievable. It worked. It was fantastic. And it really gave me a purpose. You see, so that's what why it's important to have a purpose when you do things, to have a clear vision when you do things, because then you don't have to look at it kind of like, I have to be really disciplined to do that, or I have to make certain sacrifices to do that, because then it just drags you into that direction and you just do the work.
Okay, watches is a disease. That's a big problem. Nobody needs a watch anymore because you get perfect time on your device. And so, I'm wearing an Audemars Piguet 1159, a new brand that they brought out 2 years ago. This is one of 100 made. It's very, very expensive, but it actually has appreciated in value. My Rolexes, my Patek Philippe's, my APs, Seiko, Grand Seiko is probably the biggest value in the watch industry today. Some of the mechanics coming out of Japan now rival that of Patek Philippe. I have a huge selection of those as well. I'm buying watches as an investment. That's what I say to myself. My wife just calls me an idiot. She says, how many can you possibly own? How many can you possibly use? And she's right. I have to wear 3 different watches a day just to get through just one collection I've got. So it's a big problem. But I will say, today you can mark to market the value of your watches every 24 hours with apps like Chrono 24. And my collection of watches is up 113% year over year. So that's how I justify it to myself that I have these. It's an alternative asset class, just like art. But, I just bought another watch yesterday that I don't even know when I can wear it, but it's incredibly rare and very, very unique. And I'm going to wear it on Shark Tank next year.
I know very truly I'm not a genius. I'm very clearly not gifted. And I know that the position I've reached is a position that should be given to a genius. It's not deservingly so. So the reason I'm good to fans or I believe in them is because one, I'm employed by them. So I'm like, thank you guys. You've been kind to me. So I'm returning that kindness. Or the second way to look at it is that, okay, listen, I'm really scared. Don't go anywhere because I know I don't deserve it, but thank you so much. So, stick on. I'm just being, what do you say? I'm being kind to them for my own selfish gains. But whatever the case, I'm immensely grateful. I think it comes out of gratitude. It doesn't come out of any other reason. If I see on weekends, I have hundreds of people outside my house. Today, Sunday, a lot of people will come out in the evening, and I feel like going and meeting them all. My security with the gun says don't. But I want to meet them because, I'm like, I have to thank them. So I think fans are like how you feel in front of an ocean. Sometimes when you are so full of yourself, you go down on a beach and stand in front of the sea and realize how insignificant you are. And, all the importance in your house, in your well-upholstered rooms and your Louis Vuittons and your, BMWs, and you're like, oh God, I'm so powerful. And then you go and stand in front of the sea and you realize you're such an insignificant nobody in the larger scheme of things. Fans to me are like that sea. When I see them, I realize my insignificance without them. I want to go and stand with them and say, okay, I'm insignificant, but thank you for making me so significant, for making me so special.
Working at Your Business Software, it actually went really good for a while because I didn't have a tech background, and so it gave me the opportunity to teach myself. And I found out that I liked tech, which was shocking to me. And so I would sit in there and use the computers and teach myself all the software from way back when, the WordStars, the WordPerfects, the Peachtree softwares for those of us that go way back when. And one day, and mind you, I'm living in a 3-bedroom apartment with 6 guys. 6 23, 24-year-old guys. However nasty you think it is, it was worse. I didn't have a closet. I didn't have a drawer. I had a pile. And I wear contacts. But I wear my glasses at night. And I didn't have any money, so I broke my glasses, and I would tape them up, and they'd tear them apart and hide one piece here, one piece there. Oh, it was an adventure. But so one day, I'm living in this shithole, and I get the opportunity to close a big deal. And it was going to be $1,500 commission to me. I'm like, yes, sir, let's go. And I call my boss, a guy named Michael Humecki, and I said, Michael, I've got this deal. And part of my job responsibilities were sweeping the floor. It was a retail store, sweeping the floor, making sure the windows were clean and opening it up. And I've got, one of my fellow employees all set to do all that. I call him up and say, Michael, it's a $15,000 sale, but I need to go pick it up before work. I won't be there to open things up. He goes, no, I need you to open up the store. I'm like, I got it covered. And I make the executive decision that I'm going to go pick up the check, and I'm going to hand him the check, and he's going to forget all about it, and we're all going to be friends, and I'll make my commission. Fired me for disobeying him. I haven't seen him since, but
that's probably the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah, right. But in any event, but it made me realize that I need to work for myself again. That I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and so I just took it. It's not, just is what it is. And so I couldn't take the $1,500 commission. It was his company. It was his sale, and so I found another customer that I'd been talking to, a prospect, a company called Architectural Lighting. And here I am sleeping in the shithole with no job and desperate. But I convinced this company, Architectural Lighting, there was a piece of software that I wanted to sell them for $500, and I told them it cost me $250, and that I would make it work and train them on it and support them if they would loan me the $250 to buy the software up front. And if it didn't work for whatever reason, I'd walk their dogs, clean their cars, scrub their toilets, whatever it took to pay them back. And fortunately, it worked, and that led to another customer, led to another customer. That was a company called Micro Solutions. Over the next 7 years, I didn't take a vacation, taught myself how to program, taught myself, more about technology, networking than I thought I would ever know. And we grew to, give or take 36 million in sales, 80 employees. And I sold it back, 1990, I guess, time flies, for $6 million. But for, a 29, 30-year-old kid, that was real money. And so then it's big money. And not that it's not now, it really is, but it's just, to get from the time of getting fired to getting to 80 employees and 36 million in sales, literally not one vacation.
I look for who are the people producing the greatest results, not who can talk a good game, who's producing the result. A lot of people can talk about it, it's interesting. I'm a results guy, and I believe in modeling. My original teacher was a man named Jim Rohn, you probably heard of, and he used to always say, success leaves clues. If you want something, make it a study, immerse yourself. So when I wrote Money Master the Game, I said, okay, I've been coaching Paul Tudor Jones, one of the top 10 traders for 25 years. I know more than most people ever know in a lifetime, but I want to know it all. So I'm going to interview 50 of the smartest financial people on earth. Ray Dalio, Carl Icahn, right? Warren Buffett. I want to interview people that started with nothing and became multi-billionaires. And they're all different. But my whole belief is you look for, there's like 3 skill sets that we all should have if we're great. And you're really good at these, Jim. I'm not throwing smoke your way. It's just the truth. What's made you great, what makes me great, what made everything take off for any type of business or life is understanding pattern recognition. If you understand pattern recognition, you know what to do with finance. If you understand pattern recognition, you know what to do in business. If you're great at pattern recognition with music, you can do an amazing job. If you're good at pattern recognition with dancing, you can move your body in ways most people never dream of. The people that become masters at pattern recognition, but then pattern utilization, they recognize the pattern, but then they use it. Those are the people that have extraordinary lives. And then there is one third level, and that is pattern creation, where you literally start, you played other people's music so much, and now you know enough that now you're able to create your way of doing things. And I think those three skill sets are there. So my process is, who's the best in the world on earth, and how to get access to them. And at this stage of my life, that's not that difficult to do. But even with the money book, I knew some of them, but then I'd say, listen, I get 4 or 5 people I knew to refer me, and I'd say, give me 30 minutes. My average interview was 3.5 hours. I remember Jack Bogle, who's now passed away, who created Vanguard, saying, I invited Tony Robbins into my house for 30 minutes, and 3.5 hours later, I had the most probing interview of my entire career, because I'm pulling those tools out. And once they saw the level I was playing the game at, then they wanted to help. And that's, now Ray Dalio is a good friend of mine. So the people I have access to that I can pitch and catch with, because I immerse myself and because I learned from all the people around them, it gave me a greater base. So that's what I do with anything. But then I try to take that complexity, like finance, with all these people and all the different approaches. Some are macro traders, some are value traders, et cetera, and say, what are the common denominators? How do I simplify that so we can actually use it, so you can follow through? And that's my process.
I think what makes a great MC is the same thing that makes a great father, makes a great husband, makes a great politician, makes a great human being. And it is your commitment to your personal evolution, your personal growth for the purpose of assisting others. Like, I'm working on this record now called, it's called The Mountaintop. And the idea is I've been to the mountaintop, right? And it's like, I'm going to do reports from the summit, right? I've been to the top of money. I've had all the sex that I've ever wanted. I've had all of the adulation and adoration. And I've been to the top of all of those material world mountains. And nothing makes you happy other than being useful to others. That's it. That's the only thing that ever will satisfy that thing, is that what you are is useful.
How did you develop a healthy relationship with time, Gary? That's my question.
I hung out with 80-year-olds when I was a kid. I gravitated towards grandparents and great-grandparents from a very young age. My best friend when we first came to America, because we were poor and everybody was working, was my great-grandfather. He passed, unfortunately, a year into being in America, but I have always gravitated towards them. And what you learn when you spend time with 80-year-olds, if I could tell anybody anything here, spend time with an 80-year-old that is not your grandparent. Just have a combo, a dinner, strike up a conversation. To this day, the only people I strike up conversations with at airports are people that I think look like Yoda. Like, are they 90? I want to talk to them. Because they've lived it, they give you context, and I'm practical. Like, you're 36, KP, right? Like, think about this. Think about 15 years ago when you were 21. You probably remember your 21st birthday, right?
Yep.
It feels like yesterday, and it feels like 7 trillion years ago, right?
True. Both are true.
Right? So if you think about those 15 years, you can think about how much you've accomplished, how much opportunity you had, whether you accomplished it or not, how many reps, how many at-bats, how much time that actually is. Now, what I do is when I'm 36 and I do that 15 thing, then I go, in 15 years, I'll be 51. When you hang out with older people, you realize 51's a child. I have unlimited 50, 60, and 70-year-old friends who act no different than my 30-year-old friends. And so a lot of you see me publicly going deep into youth culture. I love the kids, I love the Gen Zers, the young millennials. But I spend a lot of my not public time with 60, 70, 80-year-olds, and it's context. And that context allows me to understand.
If you're poor right now, it was called look in the mirror.
That's what Rick had always said to me. He says, if you're looking in the mirror right now and you see a loser, that's what you are. You can't make money in this economy. You better change your thinking. Hindsight is 20/20, as I say.
Yes.
If you're looking, you don't have any money, you don't have a job, your boyfriend or girlfriend has left you, and sitting there goes, well, how did I get here? How did I get here? There was a great book called Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn. So he gets thrown in a concentration camp or a gulag in Siberia, and he says, how did I get here? You know how he got there? Because he was a peacetime leader. Didn't fight back. So people are being sold to go to school, get a job, pay taxes, save money, get out of debt, buy a house. The house is an asset, and invest for the long term in a well-defined portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. And I do none of that.
Let me tell you right now that there are few things more important to your success than reading. Now, when I say reading, I mean reading, watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts. And by the way, when I also say reading, I almost never, and I'm talking less than 2% of the things that I read in my life are actually read by running my eyes across words on a page. I do almost everything in an auditory fashion. So I'm doing audiobooks on Audible, using Speechify to read PDFs, all of that. You can even now get Speechify to read web pages for you. So I find that it's far easier for me to get in a lot of time reading. I read about 2 hours a day on average, 365 days a year. And the way that I'm able to do that is I'm reading in all of my transitional moments. If I'm brushing my teeth, if I'm moving around the house, if I'm lifting weights, working out, whatever, I am reading the entire time. Again, reading YouTube videos, podcasts, documents, whatever. So it's critically important to do all of that because the whole point of the way the human psyche and brain is designed is for us to leverage culture in order to develop ourselves. So if you look at every other species, they all have to make a choice between hardwiring everything so that you're doing everything instinctually or learning from your parents, from the culture around you. As you go up the food chain, the more flexible the cognition is of the animal, the more likely they are to be thriving. Obviously, humans are the ultimate apex predator, is a cool way to think about it from my perspective. But certainly we are the most successful species. I think even certainly by biomass, I don't know if it's by number, but definitely by biomass, humans are the most successful creature on planet Earth. We outperform ants and other insects, which may have more numbers than us, but certainly we reign supreme in a lot of different ways. And the reason is that we are the most able to flexibly organize ourselves. So you can get ants that can organize themselves or bees that can organize themselves in huge groups, but they can't do it flexibly. So we can come together and do this. There are multiple people in the room right now as we're filming this that do different aspects of this, certainly the company, even more so, cities, states, countries. This is all people organizing themselves, but we can come together for a show. We can come together for government, the number of people that would be required to publish a book, the people that are cutting the trees down, developing the paper, developing the ink or an e-reader, the number of people that would have to come together to create the physical item, the software, all of that. So humans can come together in very flexible ways. They can be in multiple groups throughout a single day in their life. So the whole point, the very thing that makes the human species that successful is our ability to learn from a cultural standpoint. Now, the ultimate way to do that is to find some medium where we can transpose knowledge across time and space. And books were that first revolution. Well, I guess first there was story. So what you could say orally, not nearly as effective as being able to put things down in print. So you've got the Gutenberg revolution as the printing press comes online. Then you've got the next major one, which is the internet. And there will, of course, be more beyond that. AI is massive. I think Web3 is going to be massive. So there are these technological moments that allow this information to go far and wide. And right now, if you really want to get information in rapidly, you're going to be reading books, watching YouTube, listening to podcasts. It is massive. So the whole point is to be able to transform your potential into skill set. And so I want everybody to understand why this is so important. You don't read a book to check a box. You don't read a book to impress your parents. You don't buy a book to have it sitting on your shelf to impress people. You read a book to get good at something, to get so good that people can't stop you. I really want people to understand this. I'm going to crawl through the screen. Skills have utility. They let you do things that other people can't do. They let you beat things. They let you outcompete. They let you grow. They let you push yourself. They let you get to the point where you cannot be stopped. No matter how much people might hate you, you can get so good at something that even if they want you to fail, even if they're willing to go after you and systematically try to destroy your ability to succeed, they can't, because you can outperform. As the legend, may he rest in peace, Kobe Bryant said, booze, B-O-O-S, booze don't block dunks. Booze don't block dunks. Kobe practiced so much, so relentlessly, so unceasingly, so much more than everyone else, that he was able to compound his natural gifts and turn himself into an unstoppable scoring machine. Think about this. The greatest scouts in the world were paid a lot of money to scour the world, the entire world, to find the best players on the planet. And then those best players on the planet were given the best coaches on the planet, paid a ton of money with the sole intention of stopping Kobe Bryant from scoring on the basketball court. And yet, despite all of that, he scored 81 points in a single game. That's why I read. Because you can get so good at something, given the way that the human mind is structured, you will learn from that. Those things that you learn will become capabilities. Those capabilities will allow you to do things that other people can't do. And whether it's build a company, be a better parent, be a better teacher, whatever it is that you're trying to do, you can get extraordinarily good at that thing.
The greatest thing about what I do for me is that I'm in a position to change people's lives. It is the most incredible platform for influence that you could imagine. And it's something that I hold in great esteem and take full responsibility for. I mean, I do every show in prayer, not down on my knees praying, but I do it in sort of before every show, a mental meditation in order to get the correct message across, because you're dealing with millions of people every day, and it's very easy for something to be misinterpreted. And so my intention is always, regardless of what the show is, whether it's about sibling rivalry or wife battering or children of divorce, for people to see within each show that you are responsible for your life, that although there may be tragedy in your life, there's always a possibility to triumph. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, and that the ability to triumph begins with you. Always, always.
I made the mistake in my career, Jared talked about this, I didn't get the engagement right first. I was always engaged. I've been hungry the whole time. How many hungry in the room? I mean, I've been hungry the whole time. I just hadn't been hungry enough. I should have been thinking about, how do I get thousands of people working for me? How do I get millions of people knowing me? I didn't know that that's what I was supposed to be doing. I was too worried about selling him one product so I could get the money, because I was brought up and we didn't have anything. So for me, just to get $200, I was just doing get $200 over and over and over again. I never thought about scaling and saying, hey, how could I get millions of people to go get $200 and I get a little piece of it? I didn't understand the scale. I didn't understand 10X. 10X was written for me, it wasn't written for you. 10X just solved some of my problems. Okay, I've been in business 30 years. It's only the last 7 that changed my life. It wasn't the first 23. That's not uncommon, by the way. Okay, how old is Amazon? 25 years old. You would think they're 6 or 7 years old. Okay, when I heard they were 25 years old, I'm like, I cannot believe that. That means that guy grinded that thing out for 18 years. And the engagement, if you're gonna scale, you're gonna get frustrated. Can't find the good people. People come here, they don't really want to work here. How many of you in the room respond to resumes? People sent you a resume, I want to work for you. You call them back, they're like, who are you? Right? Their problem is your problem. Everybody agree? Their problems are an extension of your problems. If they can't make if you can't make the sale, they're not going to be able to make the sale. If you don't understand advertising and marketing, they're not going to be able to do it correctly. If you don't understand the accounting department, how can they possibly understand the accounting department? I just always believe this. I can do something about this. I can do something about this situation. There's something I can do to solve this problem.
Do you have people in your life, though, who will say, Alex, this is a bad idea. No, don't do this. Or, hey, maybe this way, like a kitchen cabinet, so to speak, to say, hey, man, like, do you have those people?
For sure.
Okay.
Well, there's a difference between like criticizing an idea or criticizing a way of living. So if someone's going to attack values, and that's like, I feel very strong about my values, but my ideas, loosely held. You know what I mean? This is my best.
Sure.
Like when we introduce an idea to the group, it's always like, this is my best bad idea. I'll say, love my idea for 5 seconds. And then I'll say it. And then it's like, oh, you can tear it apart. Right. But the growth, hey, I'd love to, grow my business. I'm like, cool, man. Like, you should do this. Then I see him a year later and I'm like, how'd that go? Like, oh, busy, man. A lot of stuff's been coming up. And I'm like, yeah, sure has. And they're like, I've been meaning to pick your brain. I'm like, I don't think so. I think I already said everything I thought last time. I had that happen multiple times. They're like, I'd love to pick your brain. I was like, you already did. And I already gave you what I thought, and you haven't done it. So I was like, there's really no point in me repeating the same statements. Yeah. Do that, and we can talk.
A couple ironic things about closing and selling that you may not have ever been told before, but I'm going to tell you. People don't have to believe what you're saying. Is that crazy? People do not have to believe what you're saying. In fact, too many of you spend too much time trying to get people to believe what you're saying. And you come across like a beggar because of it. You seem desperate. Who's ever trained you to get people to believe what you're saying doesn't get influence. There's a subtle difference that the great ones know. And you've probably never been told this before, but I know it. And persuasion is not about getting people to believe what you're saying. You ready? Persuasion is about getting people to believe you believe what you're saying. That's a subtle difference, brother. That's a subtle difference, sister. If you start to think through, I need to get people to believe I believe this, not to get them to believe it. People buy things all the time they don't believe. People buy things all the time they don't understand. That's okay. We want to educate, we want to train, but they don't have to believe everything you're saying. If they have to do that, you're going to look like you're begging all the time. They got to believe you believe it. That's a different intention. The most certain person always influences the less certain person. When you're exchanging with a recruiter or a client, they're either going to close you or you're going to close them. And that's certainty. Certainty is influence. And you can't transfer to me something that you're not experiencing for real. You have to really believe it. You got to really be a crusader. You got to really understand it. When you really believe something, you can transfer that certainty to me. Everybody with me on that? Say yes. This is a huge deal. It's a huge deal that you need to begin to understand that persuasion is they believe you believe what you're saying. I love that most people don't take anything seriously. I love that most people aren't coachable. I love that most people don't do what I teach or that anybody teaches. I love that. That's how certain people win. Half of y'all haven't written a damn word down I've said. If you were in my team, I'd slap the hell out of you. I don't say that disrespectfully. I say this as a dipshit who had a Velcroed car. I don't say that talking down to you. I say, wake up. You want to win? You want to be a millionaire? You got to quit being so casual. You walk slow, you talk slow, you implement things slow, you talk a good game like you're going to be somebody. Like you're gonna make hundreds of thousands of dollars? You can't even write a note down? You're gonna get your ass kicked in business, dude. Business is a sport, it's competitive. You gotta get focused and get in a hurry. You're around a dude like me, we will smash your organization. We come to play, we're for real. What are you, cool? I've seen all kinds of cool guys my whole career. Cool guys go broke. Cool guys have little flashes in the pan. They have a good 2 or 3 years. Players who implement strategies that get focused and intense, they win decades. They win multiple championships. You win for 2 or 3 years. You know how many guys I've known that have made money for 2, 3, 4 years that are ass broke now? You gotta win year after year after year to be a player in business.
A few years ago, my son, who was an electrical engineer, was interning at Tesla. And I was about to go on to halftime report on CNBC, and Tesla was downgraded that day. Before all the splits, it was trading at $236. And Trevor said to me, Dad, why don't you own some Tesla? I worked there as an intern, and I said, I want to short that stock. It's such a joke. It's a car company trading at a ridiculous price. He said, no, you're the joke. You don't understand what Tesla does. I work there. It's not a car company, it's a data company. Every time a car drives a mile, it goes back to the server and it tells the resolution of that road gets better and better and better, because every mile a Tesla drives, it goes into the database of mapping for autonomous cars. And I thought, I didn't know that. He said, no kidding. Like, you have a ton of money. Why don't you buy some of this stock? Because I don't have any money. So just before I went on the air, I took my phone out and I bought a whack of the stock in my personal account, not our ETFs. I just bought it. Then I forgot about it. One day I opened up the thing and I was up like 1,000%, but it was way more than 5% of that portfolio. So I started selling it and selling it. It kept going up and I kept selling it and selling it.
So you're selling enough to get back down to 5%?
Yeah, I mean, it only recently corrected, so I bought it back up to 5%, but my cost base is zero. It doesn't matter what happens to Tesla now, I made a ton of money on it. That's the trick with Bitcoin. You keep it at whatever you decide. I like 5%, right now I'm at 3. If it goes past that, I sell it down. And my mother taught me this game. She said, this way you never cry the blues. You always have cash flow. That's it. You can't go broke if you have cash.
20 years ago in the movies, rules were very clearly defined. They provided the security of your stardom in a sense. If you'd been successfully playing an angry young man, you'd pretty much be angry and young for the rest of your life. If you'd been a police inspector in 3 movies, odds were you'd be in the next 33 too. This applied to female actresses also. Wives were wives, seductresses were seductresses, mother-in-laws were mother-in-laws, and so on and so forth. Few actors would have willingly switched from romantic heroes to obsessively violent lovers. I took the leap not because I was particularly brave, but because a very dear director friend of mine sat me down and told me I was extremely ugly. And being ugly necessarily meant, I know, now I know. And being ugly necessarily meant I do bad guy roles. I wasn't the romantic hero types, he said. Actually, he used the words that my face was not chocolatey enough. So I started to eat a lot of chocolate. And while waiting for it to take effect, I jumped into bad guy roles. Dar means fear in Hindi, and everyone always tells you at speeches like this that you ought to be brave, so I'm not going to bore you with that idea. Instead, let me tell you this. Being brave means being scared all the way to the party. Yeah, I'm sorry if that word is being very scared all the way to the party. But getting there all the same and doing the funky chicken in front of all your teenage kids' friends anyway. Let me just add on behalf of all the fathers of the world who have embarrassed their kids by doing this, it takes a lot of bravery, resolve, and grit to do it. So just do it. Don't let your fears become boxes that enclose you. Open them out, feel them, and turn them into the greatest courage you are capable of. I promise you, nothing will go wrong. But if you live by your fears, everything that can possibly go wrong will go wrong. and you won't even have done the funky chicken.
When I started with the MBA, they thought their product was basketball. And this applies to entrepreneurs, very much so. You got to know what your product is. Micro Solutions, my product was profitability, using technology to generate profitability. At broadcast.com, it was our ability to make the world smaller. Even though we broadcast radio stations, those were proof of concepts so that corporations could do, Intel would pay us hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars so that they could stream their product introductions in 5 languages around the world, things they weren't able to do prior to that. So we made the world smaller. With the Mavs, we didn't sell basketball. We sold fun. We sold experiences. And I would go to the NBA owners' meetings and I'd say, okay, what was the score of your last game? Do you remember this jump shot from your last game? And like, no. And then I'd say, okay, do you remember the first game you went to with your mom or your dad? Do you remember the first game you took your son or your daughter, your niece or your nephew to? That game you went to with a girlfriend or your wife or your buddies? Oh yeah, that's what we sell. We sell experiences. And those experiences have to be affordable, and those experiences have to be made special. And so, I brought in music because what I learned early on was when a parent brought their 10-year-old or 8-year-old, that 8-year-old is looking like this, whenever there's not action going on. And so I had to keep them engaged. And all these things were completely foreign to the MBA. And they just thought I was an idiot. But, as I've learned over the years, that every time someone thinks I'm an idiot, I'm good.
I just hate to see people limited. I hate to see people suffering. I've suffered enough myself. I don't want anybody else to suffer. And I'm lit up by being able to see people really take control of their life. And we can't control everything, obviously. There are things beyond our control. But there's so much within our control that people give up because they're afraid or they don't want to fail or they're just pissed off or frustrated or overwhelmed or stressed. And so what I've managed to do is to take fundamental principles that can change the way you think and the way you feel and the way you behave, your finances, your body, your emotions, your relationships. I've been obsessed for principles that can make that happen. But I'm pretty good at creating an environment where I create a community very quickly where 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people in a room for 3 or 4 days with me. And, people who wouldn't sit for a 3-hour movie because, someone spent $300 million on it and you've been there. I'll have 15, 20,000 people there for 50 hours in a weekend. Yeah. And nobody leaves. They can vote with their feet and they get their money back anytime they want. They don't. It's a stadium full of people who become aligned. And there are different religions, different backgrounds, different belief systems, different sexual preferences, different political views. And yet we come together for a higher good. And to me, that's the most extraordinary experience. But there's an energy to it also because ideas, when people say knowledge is power, it's a lie. Knowledge is not power. It's potential power. Mm-hmm. Execution trumps knowledge every day of the week. And my job is to get people to execute. And when you get people to execute, they get momentum. And when they get momentum, it's self-fulfilling, right? Okay, I know who I am now. I know what I'm capable of. And you tend to go to higher and higher levels of contribution, of impact, and success.
So you challenge yourself a lot of times. I remember there's even one rap you was like, I dare a rapper to write a verse
without a curse. Yeah.
So what is it now? You think you've loosened up kind of on that stance more? Like you don't mind?
Yeah, for me, it's much more about authenticity. One of the major things was the idea of duality, right? The idea that right and wrong aren't separate things. They're together, right? So something that happens to you is the best thing and the worst thing that happens to you. You can't separate them. Like they go together. Everything has its yin and its yang, and you can't get around it. So the idea that my grandmother teaching me about profanity during that time was what worked to help elevate my career, and it helped elevate my experiences, but it's not necessarily right to not curse. You curse when it's the right thing.
Not gratuitously.
Not gratuitous, right. It's like when it makes your point, like telling somebody to shut the f up at the right time is the right thing.
You just scared me, Will.
Right? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, giving myself rather than specific hard and fast rules and paradigms, now I'm trying to feel the universe and feel the moments and feel the opportunities for what is right for me in this moment.
Right.
The opportunity for you to accomplish whatever the f you're up to right now has never been greater than it is right now. Thank you. We were at full scale of Web 2. From TikTok to Facebook, Meta. From TikTok to Meta. That's gonna be hard. From TikTok to Meta to YouTube to podcast, you are now pretty much capable of reaching almost any person on earth if you're good enough. My favorite other non-accountable thing. My Instagram's down because Meta wants me to just run ads and they're f***ing with the algorithm, these f***ers. My favorite part of that is not true, Rick. Here's what's actually happening. From Facebook to TikTok to Twitter to YouTube, they're just a blank supply and demand machine. They all start out the same way. How many people here by show of hands have been following me long enough that when I get crazy and got crazy on TikTok 3 years ago, you listened and it worked out for you? Raise your hands. Let's clap it up for them. That's awesome. So for the people that just raised their hands, was that the first platform that you built a big community? Raise your hand. Perfect. So for those hands, what they realized when they went through it was, oh, what Gary's been saying consistently is right. You can start at zero when a platform has a ton of people consuming, but not a ton of people making content, and the ads haven't started yet. It's just supply and demand. There's people consuming, there's people making. The third variable that always happens is eventually that platform adds an advertising product, and over time, more money goes into it, but there's still just one feed. It's just supply and demand. It's real estate. It's the algorithm. The algorithm isn't trying to trick you into spending ads. You're just not better than everybody else. You're not funnier. You're not better looking. You're not smarter. The algorithm is truth. Your subjective feelings are false. This is a good thing. This isn't bad. This is awesome. When you realize that's true, you realize, oh crap, there are people still exploding out of nowhere on YouTube, even though it's at scale. When you realize that, you're like, oh crap, there are people crushing on Instagram right now, even though the majority of us, me included, organic reach is down. They're innovating, they're adjusting. They go from a picture looking good with lighting to making a Reels, because that's how the algorithm's working. The amount of humility that I find in the business world is staggeringly low. The amount of humility that I see in the business world is staggeringly low. Why do I keep finding things like NFTs and TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and email and .com? Why is my career my career? It's based on two things, curiosity and humility. Do you think I had a lot of time in December and January this last year to spend on reading about something called NFTs? You think I had those 50, 60, 70 hours a week extra to keep digging in January? I did not. What I had was curiosity and humility. Curiosity, because my spidey senses said there's something happening, and by listening and reading all your DMs and comments, all that time I put in, that's how I stumble on shit. But way more importantly than that, humility. I have friends, when I pinged them in January and said, you need to Google this shit, you need to watch some of these YouTube videos, you need to read about this NFT, they replied with, my time's too valuable. Yeah, you know where this next line's going. I am fascinated by the lack of humility to create innovation in the entrepreneur and business world. People value their time, and my favorite part is, this has now become very clear to me. The people that tend to value their time the most in my world, when I really analyze it, are the people whose time is the least valuable.
I just know that, like your father, he went to military school, and I went to military school. And notice the people that have had really tough mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual training, they're tougher.
Yeah.
So I came out of the academy like your dad. He went in the Navy, I went in the Marine Corps, and we come out tougher, internally stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you guys get that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I call it spiritual intelligence at this point. And then, let me draw this picture. You guys have seen it before. But again, if you look at it this way, this is intelligences. And this is what makes us up. This makes us human beings. We have mental intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
We have physical intelligence. You know, like Tiger Woods is a fantastic golfer. I suck, you know. And then you have emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, they call it EQ, is the most important. Because I get my feelings hurt all the time. I get angry. I hallucinate in my head. You know, I think things that aren't true. But the biggest one of all is the spiritual. And difference between mental and spiritual, it's very simple. Mental causes two. So, man, woman, good, bad, up, down. Where spiritual is one. So I'll give you an example. Why do I do my work? Yesterday I was driving down the road and I saw this young guy. God, just broke my heart. You know, he's standing there in the hot Phoenix sun. He's just unemployed, need money to feed the kids and all that. Now, mentally I could say, well, get a job, you idiot, you know, da-da-da. But spiritually, I am him. I feel for him. So in my work, I work for this. You know, like, I don't need the money.
Yeah.
But as my teacher was Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller. And he says, I don't work for me, I work for everyone. And that was one of the biggest lessons I got from the military. You know, from the military was very high spiritual intelligence. That's why your dad and I get along so well. Because when we went into combat, which is a horrible experience of good and bad people, enemy and friends, you know. But when we climbed into our aircraft, there was a crew of 5. We became one. It is the best feeling, as horrible as it is, flying into combat, because we might not come back. But it was the highest feeling of all. It was spiritual. And I'm afraid it's not just millennials, it's human beings, you know. Well, you know, is this good? Is this bad? Is this the best Vuitton shirt? Can I get it at a better price? Or he's cute or she's cute, you know, I mean, but is there somebody better, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what's going on.
So you guys are stuck in your head, and I think you should get more into your spirit, you know, like saying, what can I do for my fellow human being?
Yeah.
What can I do for the environment? And I think the biggest secret of my success is I have all, you know, we all have these. We all have some degree of physical things we do. Yeah. Emotionally, I'm a basket case a lot of the time, you know. I get upset, I get angry, I get sad, I get my feelings hurt. And I'm always, this is good, this is bad, this is, you know, you watch politics, it's all good and bad, it's a bunch of BS. But what keeps me going is this, and it's spiritual.
Yeah.
Is how can I serve others? How can I serve the planet? How can I fix this problem? You know, and millennials, it's not just millennials, it's just human beings in general. Yeah. If you can get back to being one, being compassionate, you know, you'll always have idiots here. You'll always have idiots here and idiots here. But just stay in your spirit.
Yeah.
So like when I saw that guy, he's probably 45 years old, I couldn't imagine being a father saying, I need money for my kids. And, you know, I gave him a few bucks, but it doesn't help.
No.
When I gave him a few bucks, I was just saying, hey, we're one.
Yeah.
I feel your pain. And so what's happening, I think, it's not just millennials, it's human beings are idiots, you know.
Yeah.
We inflict a lot of pain. But this is spiritual intelligence, is how do we make it one? You know, like my love are trees. When I see people cutting down trees, I want to kill them.
Yeah.
I want to kill them. You know, and then the oceans, you know, it just breaks my heart because I grew up in the oceans.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're in our spiritual, in our heart, in our silence of the brain, of the mind, then we're most effective.
How do you go from tech to Quest Nutrition?
Dude, everybody thought we were crazy because we were going at the time where it was like, that's how you make your money. This is like the height of, this would have been 2009. So 2009, everybody in tech, it's like popping off. We've recovered from the dot-com bubble. Like this is where, Facebook is blowing up. There's just so much money. Everyone's like, you're going to get out of that into manufacturing? What are you doing? But we had said, it's got to be something that we're passionate about. It has to be something that I know I'll fight for at 2 a.m. on a Friday night, that I have a reason to be there other than money. And so I'd grown up in a morbidly obese family. So for me, and it was different for all three of us, but for me, it was about fighting for my mom and my sister. And I was like, I want to make food that they can choose based on taste, and it happens to be good for them. And so at 2 a.m. on a Friday, which I always use that because I was real, I remember one time literally being under a wrapping machine with bloody knuckles trying to repair it, because if we don't finish this batch, if the protein matrix gets cold, you lose it. And so every batch was worth $5,000 and we just couldn't afford it. And so I was like, we're staying here till this gets done. I could spend 20 minutes just describing that moment. It's crazy. But anyway, at that moment, when I asked myself, why am I doing this? That I would have a very profound and compelling answer. And so when I could think about my mom and my sister, I'm like, yo, you're going to do this. My sister ends up losing like 120 pounds. It was incredible. So it was awesome. And I had the emotional reason to keep fighting.
But how do you go and start, like, I see the why, like, here's why I'm going to do this, but how do you even start doing something like that and, like, coming up with that concept of this is what we're going to have, this is what we're going to offer? Like, is it a
super concrete answer for you? So of everything, you need to start with a really crystal clear goal. Okay, so we want to end metabolic disease. Okay, big mission, but your goal is not clear enough until you know what to do with the next 15 minutes of your life. That's how I look at everything. All right, so my goal is to end metabolic disease. What's stage one? Don't try to change behavior, try to leverage it. Okay, word. So I know people will eat junk food. Okay, so what if we could make junk food that leveraged all of the junk food science, but did it with ingredients that are actually good for you instead of bad for you? Cool. So we're going to need to understand the biomedical markers that we're going to look for. Like right now, I'm wearing a glucose patch. We used to check our blood when we would eat our own product to see, is it working, is it not working? Because we had a belief, and I still believe it to this day, the number one thing you should pay attention to is what is your glucose levels. If your glucose levels are constantly high, you're a diabetic. So it's like, and we know chronic inflammation, all that stems from that. So we just started working backwards on the problem, but you have to have these principles. That's why when you and I were talking in your interview, I'm always trying to distill, what's the principle? So I can abstract it from that moment and apply it to anything. So, all right, this is going to be a nutrition company. Cool. What are we trying to do? End metabolic disease. Why? Because my mom and my sister are struggling from this. I don't want them to die any sooner than they have to, so it's deeply personal for me. What are the things that have gotten them there? They're choosing food based on taste. Could we get people to choose food based on taste and move them forward metabolically? Yes, we can. What are form factors people are already used to? A protein bar. Why hasn't anybody made this protein bar before? As we found out, it's because all of the scaled up equipment had been engineered over 70 years with the use of high fructose corn syrup. Once you take the high fructose corn syrup out, because it will elevate your blood sugar, which defeats our whole purpose, once you take that out, it won't run through the equipment anymore. So now you have to be willing to become your own engineers, and you have to develop your own equipment. It's crazy.
The first law is the third law of motion in physics, which says, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And we showed that very beautifully in The Color Purple, when Miss Seeley says to Mr., everything you even try to do to me is already done to you. That is not just a rhetorical saying, that is law. That is Newton's third law of motion in physics, which says everything that goes out is coming back. It's just like everything that goes up is coming down. May take it a long time to come down, is coming down. Everything that goes out is coming back, it's coming back. So to answer the power of manifestation and meditation, what meditation does is sync you up with the source. What meditation does is allows you to literally tap into the power that created you, so that you are in alignment with that. And so when you carry that out into the world, everything that you do comes from the center of that alignment that's coming from the source that we call God, we call divine energy, divine intelligence, whatever name you want to give it to, we call life. When you are synced up with life,
life just gives to you.
Hey, to all of you out there that are having a hard time right now, if you're getting beat up, maybe you're broke, you don't have any money, girlfriend or boyfriend left you, had a loss in your family, lost your job. I got a little message for you. Okay, here's the deal. Number one, it can get worse. Okay, it can get a lot worse than it is. I know, I've not always lived up here where the view's good. I'm telling you, keep feeling sorry for yourself. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. Now, with the prevalence of experts on the internet, including Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, and the plethora of people that literally can make quotes and memes, knock off Abe Lincoln's quotes and take credit for them. There's no shortage of people out there saying it's going to be easy for you to be successful. Look, it's not going to be easy. Okay, the advice you're getting out there is so wide open. There's so many people telling so many people garbage. Like it's going to be easy, you're going to be able to travel all over the world, all you have to do is become an instant celebrity or a star on any channel, or all you have to do is start posting pictures of you in cars or you on trips or you working out, or look, it's endless, and it's driving me nuts that some of you out there that are getting your brains like handed to you, and you're sitting there, you're like, woe is me, what is wrong? Why can't I make it? All these people are making it. Number one, you don't even know if they're making it. You don't really know if they're making it. You don't know what their life's like, or if they're happy, or if they're really successful, if the money's real, if the cars are real, if the trips are real. You don't know any of that. So number one, don't feel sorry for yourself. Nothing's going to change because you feel sorry for yourself. I lost my first 5 jobs. I was broke at 25. The more educated I got, the more broke I seemed to be. My mom and my twin brother said, look, leave us alone. Get your freaking stuff together, and then maybe, earn your way back into our graces. I was the black sheep of my family. I didn't even like myself. And me blaming others, me feeling sorry for myself, didn't change things. And most importantly, and maybe a benefit to me, was there was nobody on the internet at that time saying, I became an internet star and that's how I made my millions of dollars. That just wasn't available. Only thing available back then was you got to work. Okay, you got to work. You got to go out into the marketplace. You got to pick up a phone. You got to start where you are. You have to take that sucky, crummy job that you have and do whatever it takes to start putting money together. You don't need to go back to college. You don't need to go get another degree. Some of you got so many degrees, you could be a freaking thermometer. Like, you got to change the game, okay? You got to get tools and skills, simple tools and skills, so you can start monetizing whatever your skill is. So number one, you got to knock off the excuse making. It can get a lot worse. I promise you, it can get terrible. I thought it was bad at 23. It got worse. Okay, it got worse. So I want to help you, but you got to drop the quick, get rich quick thing. It's going to be easy. I'm going to become a star. I'm just going to start knocking off other people's quotes. I'm going to put up pictures of cars and trips and think that makes me successful. It's not, okay? You can't steal somebody's profile and think that's going to make you successful. Got to work. You have to monetize, okay? If your daddy didn't leave you with a business, you have to go out and do something today that adds value to the marketplace and get you money, okay? Money. Nobody's telling you, go get money. Sell a product, okay? Now, you could sell a product out of your closet, but you're not gonna be able to duplicate that again tomorrow. So I strongly suggest that you get products that you can sell a second time, a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time. You got people out there just dropping F-bombs, telling you don't do anything you don't wanna do. Don't do the stuff you're no good at. Well, you're not good at anything right now, so you got to do something right now. Everybody has to start somewhere. It starts with you taking responsibility for you and saying, hey, I got to go out and get one little skill at a time. I got to man up, woman up, I got to bone up, and I got to go into the marketplace, and and add value. Sell a product, sell a service, do something for the money, work for somebody else, become the most valuable person in your space. That's what it takes, folks. There's no shortcuts, okay? Today, I'm living up here. I live on the 33rd floor of a beautiful condo, 200 panes of glass in this place. You got glass all over the place, okay? I don't even know what we spend to clean the windows. It's ridiculous. When I grew up, I had one little window that looked at a brick wall, okay? And that's when I was a kid. As I grew up and got more of an education, my window got smaller and smaller and smaller, and I was acting like I was like I had my shit together. Okay, so look, you got to get a good job. How do you get a good job? You get the job you're at and you get good at it. I don't care what job it is. I lost 5 jobs. All 5 of them, they probably shouldn't have hired me, and they did. They gave me a shot, and I lost them. I deserved to lose all 5 of them. They shouldn't have kept me there as long as I was. If you got drug problems, alcohol problems, you're gonna have to get rid of them, okay? You're gonna have to confront the beast. If you got a bunch of freaking loser friends around, you gotta get rid of them. You want the great life? You want the real deal life? It's not about posting it online. It's about living it. It's about doing it. It's about paying the price. All the successful ones paid the price.
How can somebody listening to this become more of a long-term thinker intentionally?
You have to figure out what to do in the meantime. Like, patience isn't actually active. And this is a big finding for me, was that people are like, be patient. It's a terrible directive because no one knows what to do when you say be patient. Right now, I'm being patient for every other thing in my entire life except for this podcast, because time is elapsing and other things are going in progress. I have long-term 10-year goals that right now I'm being patient for by being on this podcast with you. And so I think what a lot of people need to do is figure out the games they need to play in the meantime. And so experts at things don't really have more impulse control. I think it's a fallacy. They figure out more ways to win in the meantime. So if you've been on a treadmill and you see 30 minutes, right? And then you're like, you get 5 minutes in and you're like, okay, only 5 more 5-minute chunks, right? That is, in a nutshell, what an expert does when they approach a project. They don't try and think I'm going to run 26 miles, right? If they're running the marathon, they say, how do I break this into a chunk that I can manage, right? And then what they do is they create more ways to win. And so in those 2 years, it wasn't like I just sat and suffered for 2 years and then the book's going to come out, right? I would have many, many victories along the way that would happen. It's like, oh, we just destructed this chapter. I just rewrote it again and it's killer. Or I just got this beautiful visual that just completely explains this thing with three shapes. And it just, it explains the whole concept, right? And so you get these little mini reinforcers, and then you have the long loop of reinforcement that is, for me, that I have now learned over and over again, is that the more time I put into something, not necessarily longer, but the more time I put into something, the fact that time elapses is secondary. The more time I put into something, the better it is. And what happens too is when you're working on projects, you're working on anything, is that if you work on it over a longer period of time, you have more time for creative solutions to come to you to the problems that you're thinking through. Like the best launch I ever did in my life so far was actually of Prestige Labs, my supplement company. And it was because we actually planned it for a year. Mm-hmm. Other companies and other projects, because I was impatient, was like, let's do this in 12 weeks, right? And I can quote the entrepreneurs, you got to break and move, you got to, you know what I mean? I do all that. But you know what worked really well? When we had thought through every contingency and every scenario, and we were completely staffed up, and we had done a beta test, and we had done a 5 times bigger beta test, and we had ran processing through, we made sure payouts were on time, we made sure we had inventory tracking that was automated, we made sure that we had the right ratio between customers, service people and the number of tickets that were going to get bought. We knew we had supply chain lined up so that we could ramp up at a 10x or 20x month over month type of scaling, because we're going to thousands of locations, right? Like, that doesn't happen in a week. And so like great triumph takes great sacrifice. It just is what it is. Like there's a quote in B.F. Skinner, who's a behavioral psychologist, and he starts one of his books. He says, many variables exist, and therefore many variables must be studied. And it's just about the context of human behavior. And so a lot of people want to make these idioms or these truisms that are like 1 + 1 = 2. He's like, but human behavior has a lot of variables. And so everyone wants to have the shortcut. And he just was like, many variables must be studied. It's just like, you can't shortcut the work. The work has to be done.
I believe the greatest talent that you can draw a line through all the people who have won. Not all the people that win in business or life are unbelievable transfers of energy. Not all of them can close. Not all of them can persuade. Not all of them are great listeners. Not all of them even dealt well with adversity. They did that the majority of the time. But all of them have in common, they developed the talent, and yes, it is a talent, it is a skill of not quitting. I don't think most of you right now that are struggling in your business life right now are giving yourself enough credit for this incredible talent you're developing, which is resiliency, which is the ability not to quit. Listen to what I'm telling you. As somebody who's built multiple different companies, I've coached some of the top athletes, entertainers, business people, and politicians in the world. And I'm telling you that even in my own team, when I hire people, I look for resiliency, and a notch above that is the talent, is the skill of not quitting as the number one thing that I look for. And many of you right now listening to this possess the number one skill necessary to win and don't give yourself any credit for it, which means it's not helping build your confidence. It's not going to the bank of crediting for your identity. And so although you possess this incredible ability that so many people in the world don't have and don't possess, you have it and you don't value it. You don't prize it. You don't give yourself credit for having it. It ought to be where you draw the majority of your confidence from. The ability to say, I don't quit. I'm resilient. I own the number one skill, the number one talent required to eventually win. I already have. I can't quit. You'd have to kill me to get me out of chasing my dream, right?
For more priceless business knowledge from the legends, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I have a really supportive family, and but in our family, there were some unspoken rules, which I think probably most families have unspoken rules of one kind or another. And in mine,